2025 marked the 30th anniversary of the Tales series, and during that time, Bandai Namco has released 17 mainline titles. Many have understandably fallen through the cracks due to a lack of English translation and several other factors, but out of all these forgotten Tales games, none seemed more undeserving of its sad fate than Tales of Xillia. A game that did get an English release, did have a big budget, did get decent to good reviews, and yet nobody seems to remember this one or care much about it. This always baffled me a little. When it originally came out, I didn't beat it, but I did play enough of it to determine that it was pretty great. So why did it fall through the cracks? What made games like Tales of Symphonia or Tales of the Abyss stand the test of time, but not Xillia? What made Lloyd Irving a better protagonist than Jude Mathis? What made Abs McGee a better character than this old man that knows Tai Chi? Why did Tales fans prefer hot-ass Sheena over hot-ass Mila? 2011. It's the end of the Harry Potter movies, everyone's obsessed with Adele, and President Obama has just ripped off Osama bin Laden's head with his bare hands. Also, this is the year that I met my wife. Aw. Everyone say aw. Man, look how skinny I was. And no gray hairs yet. Father Time is truly an uncaring bastard.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Xillia's producer, Hideo Baba, said he believed the rise of mobile phone games was dramatically reducing people's attention spans and desire to play RPGs. After all, RPGs are a massive time sink. They're not going to give you instant gratification like freaking Angry Birds, or Angry Birds Rio, or Angry Birds featuring Star Wars. Baba said how well Xillia performed would largely decide whether or not Bandai Namco would continue porting the series. You see, besides the issue with mobile games, Western sensibilities also factored in here, because at the time, Americans greatly preferred their grimy, medieval Skyrim-type RPGs over cute anime adventures. And it's perhaps this reason that the PlayStation 3 barely had any good JRPGs on it at all. Don't get me wrong, there were a few gems like Ni no Kuni or Final Fantasy XIII, which I enjoyed for numerous reasons. But when you compare this lineup to the JRPG machine known as the PS2, it's clear that society's tastes were starting to change. But for us Hakujin in the States, news of a new JRPG seemed like a cold drink of water in a desert of muted colors, the macabre, and auto battles. When Xillia came out in Japan, it sold 500,000 copies in the first week, exceeding Bandai Namco's expectations, and it's to this day the most pre-ordered Tales game. 2 years later, we got an English port, but most of us were too busy watching Game of Thrones and doing the Harlem Shake to notice. Plus, the English release came out exclusively on the PS3, less than 2 months before the PlayStation 4 hit shelves. So, that was a choice. The PS3 is notoriously hard to emulate, and developers are still having a hard time porting its games. So, for a lot of Tales fans, Xillia wasn't even on the table unless you had an old PS3 laying around. For 15 years, Xillia was stuck on PS3 Island with Metal Gear Solid 4, and that lack of accessibility, I think, made it easier for JRPG enthusiasts to just completely forget that this game ever even existed. But this year, the Tales developers announced a remaster for modern consoles, so now seems like a good time to actually play the game all the way through and see for myself if it was merely bad luck that sunk this game or other factors. This is the Tales of Xillia retrospective.
No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What? What am I fighting for?
Don't get too comfortable. This is a dangerous situation.
I thought the car was supposed to move us. Wouldn't that be nice?
Can it? Ready, steady, ready, steady, ready, steady.
Mega Man, can you hear me?
This is Snake. Kept you waiting, huh?
Are you familiar with Big Chunk?
A scattered dream is like a far-off memory.
Gotta give it my all. Hope you're ready.
We can't save the world from a CD player.
Xillia is made up of 2 paths, one for either of the 2 protagonists, so I'm actually going to play the game twice, once on my original PS3 while I wait for the Xillia remaster to come out, then I'll take the alternate path on my PS5 after it's released. To start off my journey, I dusted off this fat boy and popped in the Xillia disc. Like my wife, this PS3 hasn't been turned on in years, and I'm kinda surprised it still works. I've had this console since I was a beardless 17-year-old with the dead beaver haircut that was so popular at the time. And now that I think about it, this PS3 might be my oldest physical possession. I have a lot of fond memories of, was it always this loud? I don't remember it being this loud. Before we get into it, I wanted to address two things. First being how Xillia is pronounced. It's Xillia, not Xillia. I'm gonna just put this out there because I constantly get comments from dweebs saying that I mispronounce names, so I just thought I'd get ahead of it this time. Actually, you know what, fuck it. I'm calling it Tales of Xillia, and you could all just go ahead and bitch at me in the comments because you're gonna do that anyways. Secondly, I know I have a history of not warning about spoilers, so let me assuage your worries. I'll make sure to give a warning when I'm about to cover late game plot twists and whatnot. But first, let me get this out of my system. Bruce Willis is a ghost, Aerith dies, Kevin Spacey is gay, Raiden was talking to ChatGPT the whole time. The whole time, you guys. So, I promise not to spoil anything for you, but you could spoil yourself by buying some cool items from Mecha Japan. How smooth was that transition? Not smooth at all? I don't care, I'm getting paid either way. Mecha Japan is your one-stop shop for all things Japanese, and all things amazing. And all things amazingly Japanese, like Dragon Ball Z, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Pokemon. It's actually pretty incredible the variety of Pokemon stuff they have, between the trading cards and the plushies for every variation of Eevee. Mecha Japan also has toys, figures, they've got drinkables, wearables, and all manner of rare collectibles. Because this is a Tales of video, I oughta mention they have these sick figures of Alphen from Tales of Arise, and Velvet from Tales of Berseria. If you're a fan of this channel, then you'll also be excited to learn that Mecha Japan has plenty of merch from the Persona series, Mega Man X, Fire Emblem, and even Metal Gear Solid. So if you want to snag a great deal, use this code at checkout. Thanks to Mecha Japan for sponsoring this video, now let's get back into it. When Tales of Fantasia came out in 1995 on the Super Famicom, it introduced a lot of features that would become staples in the series, like cooking, spirit summoning, and a battle system that plays like an action game rather than your standard turn-based affair.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Since then, there's been plenty of titles released every few years that add to the formula. Some games were released internationally, some sadly just in Japan, and some were given region-specific name swaps that make things unnecessarily confusing. But the two most significant titles, which I'll be referencing a lot in this video, are Tales of Symphonia and Tales of Vesperia. Symphonia should be obvious to anyone that's even remotely familiar with RPGs. This was the game that made the series popular in the West. It also featured my absolute favorite scene in any Tales game.
Here, it's hot coffee.
Thanks.
Hot, isn't it?
Yeah, really hot.
I lied. It's actually iced coffee.
What?
I lied. It's actually hot. I lied. It's actually iced coffee. I lied. It's actually...
Vesperia I'll be using for comparison as well because it's the most recent Tales game I've played, and I even already have a retrospective about it on my channel. Go check it out. It's a good time. Xillia's story gives you everything you could want in a fantasy RPG. A young man banished from his hometown, an annoying mascot character that nobody asked for, and villains who don't show up or make their plans known until like the last few hours of the game. Yep, this is a Tales game, alright. Tales of Xillia presents you with a choice between playing as Dave Matthews, oh sorry I read that wrong, Jude Mathis, or a literal god who's taken the form of a blonde waifu. Both routes are mostly the same, like 90% of the time both characters are together, and it's only really like 10% of the time where the routes diverge, but we'll cover those differences later. For now, I'm going to start with this boy and see what his deal is. In the world of Res Maxia, spirits and humans have a symbiotic relationship. Humans are able to harness magical powers from the spirits by producing energy called mana from their minds, and spirits are able to feed off that mana to survive. Humans are able to use the spirit power for a multitude of things, like powering a town's lighting or charging Rita's vibrator. That's a joke from a Vesperia video, and if you haven't watched it yet, that's on you. Spirit arts are also useful in medicine and healing, and that's what our humble protagonist, Jude Mathis, is learning to master while attending Talon Medical School in the city of Fenmont. Fenmont is a beautiful opening location, and it's perpetually nighttime because of a concept called Spirit Climb. Basically, Res Maxia is powered by the elemental spirits. Earth, wind, water, fire, you've seen Captain Planet, you know all this shit already. But when the spirit world is out of balance, it creates some freaky-deaky geographical anomalies, like a town that is always sunset, or a port that always has fair sailing weather. Practically speaking, this was the developers' way of saying, I ain't creating a day-night system for this game, fuck that extra work. But I could hardly say I blame them, because the excuse of a spirit climb is a great way to give each area in the game its own special identity. And Fenmont, maybe more than any other in Xillia, benefits from this perpetual nighttime. Between the soft yellow glow of the medical campus, or the starlight reflecting off the placid river running throughout the town, Fenmont is just peak cozy. Like 10 out of 10 cozy. It really gives the vibes of college life and having to stay up all night to cram for an exam. All this town needs now is a 24-hour Taco Bell that's within walking distance. Jude Mathis is one of these students working hard to become a doctor, learning all he can, and using spirit arts to treat all manner of weirdos, like this guy with the freaky baby face.
No, God!
But one night, Jude's professor goes missing, and his search takes him to this campus building under Imperial occupation. To Jude's horror, he discovers his professor, along with a handful of other random people, are being used as fuel for this comically large superweapon.
Do you think maybe he's compensating for something?
This is the Lance of Kresnik, and it was presumably built by the Rashigal military. In Res Maxia, there's two factions. The imperialistic Rashigal, which is where Fenmont is located, and Azul, which is a collection of clans with a trade-based economy. Both nations were previously at war with each other, and with Rashigal developing the superweapon, it seems pretty clear that the current Cold War will soon heat up back into an open conflict. Naturally, Jude wasn't supposed to witness any of this, and so he's summarily hunted down by this over-the-top Yangari anime trope of a character.
I love the look of fear in your eyes.
Vesperia had one too, and it was equally stupid. So, I guess it's just tradition at this point. Fortunately for Jude, he's saved by the game's deuteragonist, Mila Maxwell, who came to destroy the Lance of Kresnik. Maxwell is the Lord of all spirits. If you played Symphonia before, you'll remember Maxwell as the old man boss in Exire. I gotta say, this new form is a huge upgrade, because of sexiness. In fact, you'll probably recognize the other greater spirits in this game as well. Ifrit, Undini, Sylph, Gnome, and several others have appeared as reoccurring characters in the other Tales games. Mila is about to use the 4 great spirits to destroy the Lance, when Crazy Girl wakes up and starts aggressively typing. The Lance activates and sucks up the 4 spirits. This is when we learn just how dangerous this thing is. I mean, sucking the mana out of John Dinkelmeyer, who works at the campus pharmacy, is one thing, but a weapon that could suck up the 4 great spirits by which all the world's spirit energy comes from? That's a different beast entirely. With her power source drained, Mila loses her OP status, but does manage to steal the key, which the super weapon needs to activate. The Lance is no use to Rashigal without the key, so Mila becomes public enemy number 1. Well, poor Jude as well, for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. Outside, they're confronted by Imperial soldiers, including Mr. Weird Babyface from earlier. They're rescued by a mysterious stranger, and Jude has his path to escape laid out before him. You really feel bad for the poor guy here. He clearly didn't want to get in trouble, but now he has to make a decision to either surrender or run away. His life is kinda ruined no matter what he does. Jude reminds me a little of Bilbo Baggins. No, maybe Frodo Baggins. He's a normal, unremarkable person who suddenly has his life turned upside down by having a great responsibility thrust upon him. Jude is put between a rock and a hard place, but he still ultimately ends up rejecting his former life in order to help Mila. You don't really get the sense that he's thinking about the big picture yet, only that he's winging it and acting off of small individual choices to do what he thinks is right. But to quote Gandalf, it's the small everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keeps the darkness at bay. And I think in lieu of not having a lot of control of things, Jude has fallen back on his core belief in order to move forward. He's a do-gooder, something many others in the story will point out, and we'll see where that leads him. Before we continue, I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for sticking around and watching this thing, and to strongly implore you to not just like and subscribe, but to hit this bell right here. YouTube's algorithm is weird and ever-changing, and I often don't see new videos from people I subscribe to on my feed, which is stupid. I've had a handful of people tell me that they never see when I release new videos. YouTube just doesn't show it to them. But if you hit this bell, you'll get notifications whenever I drop a new video, so you won't miss anything. So Jude and Amelia are rescued by a mercenary named Alvin, and I just love that he can magically jump like 30 feet in the air. Clearly he missed his calling as a shooting guard for the Chicago Bulls. Come on and slam, and welcome to the jam. Alvin explains he saw his opportunity to save the two, and hoped that they would be so grateful that they would hire him as a bodyguard. But he's dismayed to find that his would-be employers are completely broke. Alvin is a smug, self-assured badass and/or sleazeball. He's Han Soloing pretty hard just in the first 5 minutes of knowing him. And hey, I ain't complaining. Alvin is well-traveled, and he likes to point this out whenever he can so that others will think he's cool and mysterious. So, your standard lovable rogue. Alvin tags along with Jude and Amelia, hoping to get paid for his services eventually. He goes along with the two a little too willingly at first, and it definitely made my don't trust this guy instincts flare up. As fugitives, the party has no money or means to survive, so they take on odd jobs to earn cash. This is our introduction to subquests, and this game is just lousy with them. Most involve hunting down monsters and then reporting back to earn a prize. You've played an RPG before, you know the drill. Our first subquest takes us to the Aladhi Trail, and this seems like a good time to talk about the map design in Xillia. In short, it's some of the best and worst of the series. Some of the areas we'll traverse throughout the adventure have such striking and unique designs, like the Kajara Sea Falls with its curious crescent cliffs. It's quite a beautiful area, and it feels just right for a magical fantasy world. The Sapstrath Deepwood has a fairly complex design, introducing the player to branching paths and obstacles to avoid in lieu of the game having any proper dungeons. The Burmia Gorge is basically the Grand Canyon, and its difficulty revolves around its multi-tiered paths with lots of vertical exploration and puzzle solving. These areas are all intentionally designed and help flesh out the world of Res Maxia. You really get a sense that this is a thoughtfully crafted world that actual people and creatures could belong in. And there's plenty of creativity here that makes these areas unique and memorable. Now for the bad. Tales of Xillia doesn't have any exploration of the world map. Instead, it allows you to quick travel to areas you've already been to whenever you want, story plot holes be damned. Seeing the world map of the game as a single screen graphic is simultaneously really helpful and strangely disappointing. The scope of the game doesn't take place over a very big area, and being able to see the entire map this early in the game can make the rest of your adventure feel underwhelming. Plus, I love a good overworld exploration map, with hidden treasures and enigmatic islands to find. On the other hand, Xillia has almost no backtracking at all, unlike other entries like Vesperia. I would bet that backtracking in that game added at least a dozen hours to the runtime, and by contrast, Xillia is the much shorter game to its benefit. So, I understand why the developers opted out of an explorable world map. This does simplify things and cuts out the clutter, but it does come at the cost of demystifying the world and making it far less exciting. This isn't to say Xillia has no padding at all. There's plenty of trails, plains, and valleys that bridge the gap between points of interest. These areas are full of monsters meandering about, meant to slow down the player, or offer a means to level up your character if you're a glass half full kind of optimist. I am not an optimist. These areas are far less detailed and intentionally designed than some of the major locations I mentioned previously. Basically, these areas have Calmland syndrome. If you've played Final Fantasy X, you probably remember these vast empty plains you'll have to run across, and there's very little to see here. These in-between areas in Xillia have a similar feel, and while maybe you could blame such egregious filler content on the hardware limitations of the PS2, this is the PS3, baby, and it should be held to a slightly higher standard. Areas like the Aladhi Trail or Talus High Road really stretch the player's goodwill with their vast, monotonous plains of mediocrity, completely devoid of substance. Actually, that's not entirely true. These areas are absolutely littered with treasure chests and bags of loot. You may remember me mentioning in the video's intro how mobile games and microtransactions were starting to become the norm in gaming around this time. Well, you could definitely see this here in Xillia. The various rewards are no doubt meant to distract the player from copy-paste map design. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing by itself. After all, I'm a simpleton that wants to see what that shiny thing in the tree is, but it is pretty blatant. Like, wait, this map design kinda sucks. Hey, look over here. No, it doesn't. What's in that treasure chest, huh? Look at the shiny thing over here. Have you leveled up your character yet? You got GP, aren't you gonna spend it? Your grandma poked you 5 minutes ago on Farmville, aren't you gonna poke her back? Don't you want to poke your grandma? Anyways, the party travels to Mila's home village of Niakira, where she hopes to resummon the four great spirits. Along the way, they come across the humble town of Hamel, a quiet orchard town that, at the risk of doxing myself, reminds me of a place where I live called Apple Hill. A spot that used to be quaint and charming and has since become swarmed every season by tourists thanks to Instagram influencers blowing the spot up. Thanks a lot, Instagram. Hamel's main export is Napples, that's apples with an N. I hate when fictional stories do this, where they have to change one letter to pretend like it's something else. Why can't they just have apples? We literally already have an item called Apple Gels. What are you afraid of, Bandai? Do you not want to piss off Big Apple or something? Everyone seems nice in Hamel, with one glaring omission. There's this little girl named Elise, and everyone is weirdly hostile towards her, for reasons that are never really explained. Now, my guess would be that the townsfolk are afraid of her because she has a demonic-possessed doll named Tipo. Elise is an orphan living by herself in a basement and just barely being taken care of by this giant named Zhao. Elise doesn't seem to remember much about her past or what happened to her parents. Jude, always the do-gooder, asks Elise to come along so they could find a more suitable home for her. We're gonna find your Mr. Warbucks yet, little girl. Bet you didn't think I was gonna use a clip from the Black Annie. Well, shame on you. Elise is extremely shy and reserved, but her doll, Tipo, makes up for it by never shutting up.
This is some serious friendship stuff right here. Level 99 on the friendship meter. And if you don't eat a lot, you'll never grow bazungas. Don't talk to strangers, Elise. Strangers are bad.
Why is this stuffed animal talking?
I get that German word for secondhand embarrassment every time Tipo says something. What is it? Friendsham? Tipo gives me friendsham.
Bazungas!
For now, Tipo's saving grace is that he sounds a little like Bobby Hill, and that always makes me laugh.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
Upon arriving in Niakira, Mila fails to summon the four great spirits. She realizes that the spirits weren't just dispersed by the Lance of Kresnik, but they were actually captured by it. Mila determines to destroy the super weapon, even without her super friends to aid her. There's not too much I could say about Mila Maxwell as a character at this point in the story. She's basically a stoic, impersonal god, reincarnated in human form.
Isn't this mission too big for just one person? I mean, you could die.
That changes nothing. The task must be completed.
Her journey so far has involved her learning about humanity and being baffled at their emotions. Her personality is not unlike Aegis from Persona 3, a robot that gradually learns what it means to be alive. What makes Mila a bit of a walking contradiction, though, is that her whole mission, which she is thus far dead set on achieving, revolves around saving humanity from self-destruction, and now the only way she could do that is in the body of a mortal. You'd think her role in the story is meant to resemble Jesus Christ, but unlike Jesus, Mila doesn't really seem to care that much about people, or if she does, she hides it well.
Would it kill you to show a little concern? I mean, you dragged him into this, right?
He insisted on helping me. I told him again and again to go home, but he wouldn't listen.
Wait, why are you breaking into the lab? What are you...
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
Despite Mila's detached demeanor, she has a swath of devoted acolytes that revere her as a god. In the Tales games, you could usually change who your lead character is, and by using Mila as your lead, the Niakira villagers will bow down when you get near them. I love these kind of little details the developers didn't need to add, but did anyways. Among these apostles is Mila's handmaid, Ivor, who's less of a servant and more of a fuckboy for Mila.
This is holy ground, and you'll desecrate it no more! I'm the only one ordained to serve Lady Mila.
He thinks Jude isn't worthy of accompanying Mila on her quest, but she shuts him down pretty quick.
You're annoying.
Ivor is going to keep showing up throughout the story as a comedic foil, so get used to him. Mila decides she's going to have to destroy the Lance of Kresnik using only her human strength. This inspires some bravery in Jude, who up till this point was considering how he might be able to pick up the pieces of his broken life. But now that he has a righteous mission, and there's no going back anyways, he decides to join Mila on her quest. Something I appreciate about Xillia is that it doesn't take forever and a day to tell the player what the stakes are and why the character should care about them. Unlike my experience with Vesperia, where the party kind of just meanders from fetch quest to fetch quest, and 20 hours in you're like, wait, wasn't I supposed to be fixing a fountain? Is there even an antagonist in this game yet? Is the antagonist Bandai Namco for wasting so much of my time? With Xillia, you know right away what your purpose is, and that makes it a lot easier to enjoy the storyline for what it is. It was getting hot, alright? With the goal of heading back to Fenmont to destroy the Lance of Kresnik, the party comes across Sherrilton, a merchant town in the commerce capital of Rashigal. This is a good place to restock on valuable supplies and buy some new weapons and armor. Mutton! Fresh mutton! Mutton! Fresh mutton! Xillia has a really unique shop mechanic in the form of expansion. Typically in RPGs, as you get further into the game, each town will have progressively better items to buy. But here, progress is locked behind shop levels. The more the shop's level increases, the more you'll get access to better items. You can level up shops by donating materials that you'll find throughout your journey. See, I'm not weird for collecting spider webs, there was a plan all along. You could also expand shops by just donating money outright. Like a billionaire buying a cabinet position in the White House, you too can cheat the system by just bribing the shop owner with enough gold. You see, it's actually not hard at all to completely rig the system in your favor. Weapons, armor, items, accessories, and food all have their own separate shop levels, and the assumption is that the player will be leveling them all evenly throughout the game. But you could just not do that. You could put all your money and material donations into, say, the weapon shop, quickly level it up to 99, and get all sorts of endgame weapons you weren't meant to have that early on. I like that the game doesn't put any artificial restraints on you here. If you want to only focus on one area, you totally can. Is it wise? Probably not, but you have the freedom to do so. Cooking is a feature that's been in the Tales series for a long time. You collect different ingredients throughout the game and combine them to create meals. Meals give you all manner of status perks during battle, like heightened agility or immunity from poison, for a brief period. It was a lot of fun seeking out the enigmatic Wonder Chef and learning new recipes. Sadly, the Wonder Chef doesn't make an appearance in Xillia, and that's because there is no cooking in this game at all.
What the fuck is going on? Where's the lamb sauce? You fucking donkey!
Xillia instead opts to go the Final Fantasy XV route and simply allow you to buy pre-made meals and eat them one at a time.
I've come up with a new recipe.
This decision, like the lack of an explorable world map, was probably the developer's way of streamlining the gameplay. I mean, who wants to waste time looking for ingredients, right? Xillia made a bold move telling the Wonder Chef to fuck off, but hey, it's the future. We have AI drive-thru menus at Wendy's now. Things are changing. While I do appreciate the novelty of the shop expansion system and the quick travel on the world map, it's starting to feel like Tales of Xillia is just making Faustian bargains whenever it can. Sure, it's convenient to be able to access and expand any shop from any vendor, but that also makes it boring. Literally every vendor in the entire game has the exact same items because the shop levels follow the player, not the vendor. They might as well have made the shop a menu item that you could access whenever you want. It'd make the same difference. To contrast, in Golden Sun, each town had its own set of weapons and armor that you could only find in that town. It gave each shop weight and significance, not just in gameplay, but in world building. How did that particular shop owner get his hands on that sword? I don't know, but I get a better sense that this NPC is an actual dude with a family to feed. The merchants in Xillia might as well be vending machines. This actually brings me to another complaint I have with this game. Sherrilton, for being such a big city, has a real lack of personality when it comes to its inhabitants. And that's because most of the NPCs in this game just have nothing interesting to say at all. When it comes to RPGs, you could call me freaking Adrian Monk because of my obsessive need to go down every branching path and talk to every single NPC I encounter. My channel views have been on the steady decline lately, but I'm sure my early 2000s basic cable detective show references will lure in that sweet Gen Z audience I'm sorely lacking. And it's a shame because when done correctly, NPC dialogue can be a great way to expand the lore of the story and flesh out the intricacies of the world, or just be a fun distraction. The Toads in the Paper Mario games are the perfect NPCs in this way, and their dialogue is often hilarious. Well thought out NPCs give the player reason to talk to them. The NPCs in the Tales series have never been very interesting, and the ones in Xillia are probably the worst of them. But back to the story. Elise makes fast friends with a girl named Drizel, who ends up being the governor's sister, and before long, the party is welcomed into their inner circle, where we meet Governor Klein and his butler Rowan, who's clearly going to be our next party member because, come on, look at that mustache. It's wrapping all the way around his fucking head. Rowan is an older gentleman and his inclusion is frankly shocking. I mean, seeing a character over 30 in a JRPG is like seeing a millennial working at Dutch Bros. It just doesn't happen. I don't think it's even allowed. Rowan is an Alfred Pennyworth type. Professional but caring, gentle but firm. He's the fun grandpa, the one that takes you on fishing trips and tells you all about how he won over your grandma by doing the Charleston at the ice cream social. But beneath his gentle demeanor is a surprisingly fierce warrior. Enough so that it raises serious questions about how this old man spent his younger years and how such a skilled fighter ended up serving as a humble butler. But we'll come back to that. We learn from Governor Klein that the citizens are on edge as Rashigal Imperial soldiers are about, looking for the foreign spies that stole something from a military base. The party tells Klein about the Lance of Kresnik, and this disturbs the governor. You see, Sherrilton had not long ago won its independence from Rashigal, and Rashigal invading and reclaiming the merchant city has always been a looming threat. Governor Klein is certain now that Noctigal, king of Rashigal, is going to use the Lance of Kresnik to bring Sherrilton and its allies to heel. And sure enough, not long after this conversation, shit really hits the fan. Mila, Elise, and Drizel are captured by Imperial troops, and Governor Klein is shot and killed by an assassin. What I can appreciate about this scene, though, is that Jude actually tries using healing magic to save him. I hate when characters in RPGs get killed in a cutscene, and it's like, did y'all forget your asses could just cast Kiraga? Jude's magic isn't enough to save him, as it turns out, but hey, at least he tried. Without a leader to stop them, Rashigal troops fully invade and occupy Sherrilton. Rowan grieves his master's death and realizes what he must do. We learn that Noctigal and Rowan used to serve in the military together, and they had a close brothers-in-arms kind of bond. Noctigal and his siblings were the princes of Rashigal, and when their father died, the three fought to the death to be the heir, with Noctigal coming out on top. This period blackened his heart, and when he came into power, he went full totalitarian. Rowan considered staying by his side to be a voice of reason, but instead, he turned his back on his former friend, and ever since, he's had doubts about whether or not he did the right thing. But now that the Rashigal king has gone too far, Rowan decides he needs to finally stand up to him. Now, I know I went on a long tangent about how bad the NPCs are written in this game, but in contrast, I think the villains are written fairly well, especially for a Tales game. The Rashigal army is made up of a significant amount of decent folks who have strong reservations about the orders they've been given. A lot of the soldiers were hesitant to occupy the city, and it's sunken their morale. Unlike, say, the Desians from Tales of Symphonia, the Rashigal troops aren't just comically evil caricatures that revel in other people's suffering. Instead, we find just a lot of normal people trying to navigate the unethical orders they've been given. And fortunately for us, that's going to be our saving grace here, because when the party chases the captive girls to the nearby Fort Gondala, the guards don't even try to stop you from entering. They are thoroughly against what King Noctigal is up to, and they're willing to help you breach the fortress. This seems to be a running theme in Tales of Xillia, and one that I really liked. The idea that even if you're put into an unfair, shitty situation, you could always still choose to do what's right. Jude joined Mila's crusade even though it meant sacrificing a promising medical career and becoming a fugitive. Likewise, these Fort Gondala guards will likely be punished, or maybe even executed for helping Jude. but they still make the choice to do it anyways. Fort Kandala isn't particularly difficult to navigate, but it does introduce a familiar mechanic in the Tales series, and that's the obligatory block-moving puzzle. Xillia doesn't try very hard with dungeon puzzles, and after seeing this mechanic enough times, it does make me yearn for the Dance Dance Revolution minigame from Vesperia.
If we don't do this right, then Estelle will freaking die.
But hey, so long as we don't have to do that ice sliding puzzle from every RPG ever, I'll be happy. In the heart of the fortress, we find Noctigal fighting Mila and having the upper hand. Rowan intervenes, and Noctigal outs Rowan's true identity as Ilbert the Conductor, a famous war tactician. And the party is shocked to learn this humble old man has really been freaking sick and cool this whole time. Jude and the gang rescue the girls, but are unable to stop the Rashgal King from escaping. Mila is seriously wounded from her encounter, and a concerned Jude waits by her bedside while she recovers. It's around this time that Alvin informs Jude that he's found a new employer, and that he'll be leaving the party. I don't know if the scene was supposed to be an homage or just a blatant ripoff, but it quite literally is just that scene from Star Wars when Han tells Luke that he won't be helping the rebels destroy the Death Star.
That woman I was chatting with, she's my new employer.
Got some old debts I gotta pay off with this stuff.
Huh? You're bailing on us?
They could use a good pilot like you. You're turning your back on them.
Why risk my life to accomplish someone else's suicide run?
Besides, attacking that battle station ain't my idea of courage. It's more like suicide.
They're the same picture.
Mila eventually wakes up, but she's unable to walk. Her legs are more useless than my art degree, but she's dedicated nevertheless to finishing her mission. How is she going to do that with legs that work less than Congress? Stay tuned to find out.
Stock up on apple gels and light bottles, because Tales of Xillia will continue after this break. I know this is a world of magic and spirits, but is literally nobody concerned about the possessed doll? If I was a random NPC and I saw this thing flying around, I'd have a lot of questions. Guess that's just me.
Jude is taking Mila back to his hometown of Laurent. His father is a doctor and once successfully treated a paralyzed man, so Jude figures he may be able to treat Mila too. She's riding on horseback, and in a world of monsters and fantasy creatures, there's something really surreal and a little goofy about seeing just like a regular-ass horse. Along the way, the weather turns for the worse, and the travelers find shelter in a cave. Since meeting Mila, it's heavily implied that Jude is in love with her. His loyalty to her cause was mostly altruistic, but I think infatuation factored in as well, and I could hardly blame him. We all do stupid things when we're young and in love, like blowing up military weapons and following a blonde goddess across the country. Maybe I should have picked different examples. Unfortunately for our ex-medical student, this is a one-way road. Mila is barely capable of basic human emotion, much less love. She does show signs of respect for Jude, but in the way you might respect your dog for doing a trick.
You really are a do-gooder, aren't you?
In fact, the romantic tension is more toned down in Xillia than you'd think, with Jude's infatuation never really evolving past a crush. It seems like a missed opportunity to expand both these characters, and especially Mila, who's a bit of a personality vacuum.
A bit condescending, aren't we?
Mila is often objectified for her looks throughout the game. This is a JRPG after all. I'm sure Bandai Namco knows their audience is a bunch of gooners.
What would you say are her finest features?
Oh, maybe how good she smells, or those amazing curves.
Stop gooning. Oh my god. Are you a gooner? Seriously, are you gooning again? Literally, all you do all day is goon. You're obsessed with me. All you do is repost gooner pages. You repost me. All you do is goon. Stop it.
On a completely unrelated note, thank you all for watching my Mega Man X Dive video. It's been doing really well for some reason. What makes this even funnier is that Mila is just the reincarnation of this old man from Symphonia, and Mila admits as much, saying that gender doesn't really apply to her.
A human girl? Strictly speaking, the concept of gender does not apply to me.
It's giving he, she, we, they, them, non-binary, vegan, vegetarian. I'm scared. I'm gonna give it 2 stars.
So Jude, Alvin, and the rest are really just gooning over this old man, which is hilarious. Good looks are often seen as a defining trait rather than a feature when a person doesn't have a lot else going on for them. This is true in real life as it is in fiction, and I think if you strip away Mila's looks, all that's left is kind of a hollow, one-note character. But maybe that will change by the end of the story. The two travelers take a boat to the island of Laurent, a dog-eat-dog kind of town full of ruffians and ne'er-do-wells and wild children tossing the handicap into the ocean. Actually, Laurent is a pleasant place, and this girl isn't crippled at all. She's Jude's childhood friend, Leia, and wow, how convenient for Mila that she now has a wheelchair she could use. What are the odds? Laurent is a small town with only one clinic, ran by Jude's parents. His mom is so inundated with patients, she could hardly catch up with her son.
My grandpa was working on the roof and he fell. He's out cold.
Don't worry, I'll be right there. I need to leave for a bit. Hold down the fort, will you?
Huh? But Jude just got here.
Yeah, Jude's mom, what's the rush? That old man already fell off the roof. It's not like he's going anywhere. It's not like he could fall off the roof a second time. When we meet Jude's dad, we quickly learn what an unloving hard-ass he is.
From honor student to fugitive, huh?
An Asian father scolding his son for not becoming a doctor? Never heard that one before. While Jude's dad won't help directly, his past research does hold the key. Jude learns of a device called an asperixis that can help heal Mila, but it requires a MacGuffin called a spirit fossil to operate. That leads our crew to the nearby Felgana mines to look for it.
A mine!
And these mines are absolutely swarming with monsters that need a good fighting. I can't believe I've gone this far in the video without talking about Xillia's battle system, but here we are. Combat in Xillia is hardly revolutionary for the series, but it's still enjoyable. I think the gameplay actually peaked with Vesperia. Forming combos was just so satisfying and never got old. It was also just a really smooth, well-oiled machine. Battles in Xillia mostly function the same, but there could be some annoying hiccups that make it less enjoyable. The biggest issue I had is that your fighter never seems to want to face the right direction, leading to a lot of sword swiping in the air. There's also far too many shortcut commands, trying to do too many things. Trying to remember which combination of buttons swaps out party members, or switches party members, or whatever is like trying to remember combinations in Street Fighter or something. And maybe that's just my own fault for having a goldfish memory, not being able to remember more than 2 things at one given time, but it nevertheless dampened my enjoyment. Complaints aside, if you're familiar with the Tales series, then you should feel right at home. The player moves around the arena and can attack, defend, use items or arts. Arts are special skills you could acquire by leveling up your character. All the hits are here. Demon Fang, fucking Pow Hammer. This is why I'll never play as you, Elise. You can play as any of your party members, and I think generally speaking, the Tales series has done a progressively better job making each character fun to play as. There are exceptions, like I'd obviously rather have the CPU controlling the spellcasting characters like Rowan, but for the most part, everyone has their strengths. Jude is fast and nimble, Mila is good at vertical combat, Alvin is the heavy hitter, Elise is the healer, and Rowan is the spellcaster. Leia fights with a bow staff, and since Keelik was always my favorite character to play as in Soul Calibur, I spent most of my time with her. What's unique to Xillia is the link system.
Okay.
You can pair any party members together, and when linked, they become even more powerful. Alvin, for example, is good at breaking an enemy's defense. So if you link with him, he can beat up an enemy from behind while you attack from the front. Yep, Jude and Alvin make for a great DP. Which of course stands for dual partners. Performing combos can also fill this gauge, and when it's full, you can pull off special moves with your linked partner. Each party member has a special move with each other, and it's fun to experiment to see which combination works the best. The link system is also a great way to see the camaraderie our gang of misfits have with each other. Jude and Leia both learn martial arts from the same teacher, so it's cool to see them pairing up. Rowan and Mila have a mutual respect for each other as the only mature ones in the group. Even Alvin and Leia, two characters that don't really have much in common, can still find common ground after surviving the battlefield together. I think about this handshake all the time. Once you've gotten enough experience from battle, you'll level up, and that brings us to the Lilium Orb. It's a grid-based leveling up system, not too different from Final Fantasy X. Essentially, you can use points to unlock nodes along paths, and when you connect paths together, it will unlock nodes in between. These kind of systems are always fun to me because it gives a lot of agency over which skills you'll learn and in what order, or what stats you want to prioritize improving. Or, if you're lazy, you could just hit the auto level up button and the CPU will figure it out for you. I'm not ashamed to admit that this is what I ended up doing during my first playthrough. Okay, maybe I'm a little bit ashamed to admit that, but you know what? I've got a lot of other things going on in my life right now. I can't wrap my brain around all this node shit, okay? I've got like 2 weeks before the last season of Stranger Things comes out, and I have to rewatch the whole show first because I do not remember anything about the storyline at all.
If you guys you're gay!
At the end of the mine, Jude and Leia find the item they need to power the Aspirixix, but of course, you'll need to fight a boss first. This guy was so annoying. It kept burrowing in the ground and then bursting out like some Alaskan bullworm. In fact, this boss ends up being such a hassle that poor crippled Mila has to get involved. She activates the Aspirixix and regains use of her legs and uses them to kick the boss's ass.
I'm gonna kick your ass!
She then passes out as the medical device comes with the unfortunate trade-off of being extremely painful. Jude and Leia take Mila back home, and Dr. Mathis is about to slap the shit out of his son for going to the mines behind his back.
How can you stop? How can you stop?
Jude stands up for himself, but it's still sad to see. It's honestly kind of a waste to have this kind of family drama for Jude. It's interesting, but it doesn't really tell us much about Jude as a character. He's a well-adjusted guy, all things considered, so the story spending all this time showing how abusive his dad is, well, it just doesn't really go anywhere. And worst of all, his name is Derek. Derek.
No one even remembers my name. They keep calling me Derek.
After Mila has rested some more from her injuries, she and Jude head to the port to sail onward towards Fenmont. There, they're greeted by all the other party members for various reasons. Rowan and Elise came to wish them goodbye, but decided instead they'd rather accompany them on their adventure. Rowan knows he has a duty to personally stop King Noctigal, and Elise hopes that by traveling the world, she might find out what happened to her parents. Alvin shows up and wants to rejoin the group after explaining that his last job just didn't pan out. I find the party all coming together at the same time a little too convenient for the plot here, but that's okay. It's a JRPG, I'm not expecting Hemingway or anything, but occasionally moments like this do suspend my disbelief a little. Well, that and the talking doll.
Bazungas!
On the ship to Fenmont, Jude discovers Leia has snuck aboard in a barrel like so much Sue from Grandia. She wants to tag along after being inspired by Mila's bravery in the Falgana mines. I haven't really talked about Leia yet, so let's do that now. Leia is the Zooey Deschanel manic pixie dream girl of the group. She's kind of goofy, kind of quirky, kind of cute. She's not really an extreme version of anything. In fact, she's written as a pretty down-to-earth character, all things considered. Leia and Jude have a pre-established relationship when she's introduced, but it doesn't take long to figure out that they don't view each other in the same terms. Jude definitely sees her as more of a little sister. He kind of teases her and writes her off. Leia, on the other hand, seems to view Jude in less platonic terms. She immediately acts jealous when she meets Mila, and tries to gauge the nature of their relationship.
So tell me, who's your friend?
I suppose that you know this girl.
Yeah. She's an old friend of mine.
Leia is spunky and competitive, but she has a bit of an inferiority complex, and as the story progresses, she has some moments of feeling like she's holding the team back. And it makes sense. She's not as hot as Mila, she's not as good at using spirit arts as Jude is, and she doesn't fill any particular void for the group, or at least she doesn't think so. Plus, she was left behind in their small town for years while Jude was off making something of himself in college. Her self-doubt actually makes a lot of sense, but nevertheless, she sees in this adventure an opportunity to learn about the greater world and improve herself for the better, so here she is. And by golly, she's gonna make something of herself in the big city or die trying.
Miss Leia!
With Forkandala blocking one way to Fenmont and unpassable marshlands blocking the other, it seems the only way to get to Fenmont is to fly there. The nearby town of Jiandu is known for having wyverns, for the layman, little flying dragons. So that's our next destination. I was legitimately in awe when I first came to Jiandu. It's a huge bustling merchant city like Sherrilton, but the buildings and the structures are built into the cliffside like some ancient Montezuman city. The city itself sits in the bottom of a canyon with a river running through it. With the cliffside looming above you, it really makes you feel small. The different flags and banners waving from the multi-tiered structures sells the feeling that you're walking through a giant international mecca. Mutton! Fresh mutton! Mutton! Fresh mutton! It might just be because I played Xillia on a giant projector screen, and so things were easier to notice, but I found the visuals in this game really striking. Tales games aren't really known for their graphics, but I found Xillia to be a really visually beautiful game, even though it doesn't have the cel-shaded look I love from Vesperia. In fact, I'd say Xillia is probably just barely on the declining side of the hill in the scope of the whole series. The bottom on this side would be Symphonia with its overly chibi look, and on the right side would be Arise, which tried to look too realistic and everyone just ended up looking like action figures. Xillia is a PS3 game, and that was an ugly, pimple-covered transition period for the PlayStation, but the game does its best with what it can. It suffers from blurry, stretched-out textures and too much empty space. This is especially true in the wilderness areas like I mentioned earlier, but when the game actually tries to make an area look good, it looks really good. I will say the character models move a bit stiffly, but it didn't really bother me that much. Mila's hair is ridiculous though. It's just this giant chunk of polygons, and the PS3 was absolutely not equipped to handle realistic hair physics yet. Tales games often make up for their sometimes underwhelming graphics by incorporating really expressive and beautifully drawn anime artwork for their main characters. Xillia's characters all have really vivid and imaginative designs. They don't feel too over the top. One thing I found interesting about Xillia's visuals was the dichotomy of the character designs. It may not surprise you to learn that Jude and Mila were both designed by separate artists. Kosuke Fujishima was responsible for Jude, while Mila was designed by Mutsumi Imawata, both veteran artists for the series. Fujishima was the character designer for the first game, Fantasia, as well as Symphonia, Abyss, and Vesperia. This style is a bit more grounded, people in uniforms, monochromatic outfits, and characters that have a signature color. Inamata did the character designs for Destiny, Eternia, and Graces. Her style uses a lot of watercolor, which gave everything a soft, ethereal feel. The characters had innocent cherub faces, esoteric outfits, and very 80s hair. With that knowledge, the look of the lead protagonists makes more sense. Jude is the more straight and narrow character, and Mila has the more whimsical design. I think in a game about two very different characters working together to achieve a shared goal, it was an interesting idea having these two very talented artists sharing the responsibility of bringing these characters to life. The title sequence and a few cutscenes were animated by Ufotable. Company, a well-respected anime studio. They had previously worked on Tales of Symphonia OVA, but Xillia was the first time they made animations for the Tales games, and they went on to make a lot more fantastic animations for future Tales games. Back in Shandu, our heroes are so distracted by the marvels of the city that they don't notice the treacherous rocks coming loose above their heads. One almost hits Leia, but she's saved by a townsfolk named Isla. Isla, coincidentally, happens to be engaged to the one dude in Shandu with a wyvern. Lucky us. The fiancé, Jurgen, belongs to a clan that regularly competes at the Jiandu Coliseum, but recently their champion fighter bowed out, and now they need a replacement. Jurgen offers to let our party borrow the wyverns if they could help him with the tournament. I'm a big fan of Coliseum sections in RPGs. Sure, they don't do anything for the story, and it's deliberate padding from the developers, but I don't mind. I like a tidy, structured challenge, and if the final combatant is some kind of cameo or super boss, like a Sephiroth or a Rockhawk, even better. Our party excels in the tournament. The night before the final match, they're about to dig into dinner when people around them start dropping like flies. Geez, I didn't know my wife was cooking tonight. They learn just in time that their food was poisoned and avoid taking any bites. The other random Shanduians are not so lucky. This is when Mila tells her companions about Exodus, a group of radicals that have been wanting her dead for years, and they're even willing to kill a room full of innocent people to do it. For decades, Mila has been destroying Spirix technology, and that's made her their enemy, for reasons we'll understand later. Alvin drops a bit of a bombshell. He admits that he used to work for them, but he never thought that they'd do something like this. Everyone then just goes to bed, like, okay, sure, let's continue sleeping in the same hotel we were almost assassinated in. That seems like a good idea. During the final round of the tournament, our heroes split up, some fighting on the stage, some scouring the crowds for potential Exodus assassins. Instead, Tipo is snatched, to everyone's immense surprise, including myself. It seems like the possessed toy was the target all along. Speaking to Isla will shed the light we need. It turns out that Elise has had a pretty tragic past. When she was 4, she was sold as a child slave to a research institute where she would be held captive for 8 years. This institute is where Tipo originally came from, so Isla suggests that that's where Exodus has taken him. A guilt-ridden Isla admits that she knows all about this because she was in fact the one that had originally sold Elise as a slave. We also learn a fair deal about Alvin around this time. Alvin's mother lives in Shandu and has severe dementia. Unable to take care of herself, Alvin hired Isla to be her live-in nurse. But this isn't done on good terms. Isla used to be a child napper, but has since tried to go straight. Alvin found out about her past and has been blackmailing her. She takes care of his mom, he keeps his mouth shut, and Isla's fiancé never learns what a huge piece of shit she is. You almost feel bad for her, begging Alvin to release her from the deal and saying she doesn't want to look after his mom anymore, and Alvin just could not have any less sympathy for her. But don't feel too bad, because in an optional side quest, we learn that Isla has been slowly poisoning Alvin's mom for years. Holy shit, Isla, that's elder abuse.
Could I trouble you for a glass of warm milk? It helps put me to sleep.
You could trouble me for a warm glass of shut the hell up.
This was the point where the storytelling began to feel a little lazy for my taste. Well, not so much the plot, but the way things unfold. The fact that our heroes ran into a person that has the wyverns they need, and she also has ties to both Alvin and Elise's past, it's just too much of a coincidence, you know? My suspension of disbelief is being stretched more than goatsy, which is the name of my goat, who does yoga. So the party searches Labrie Hollow, the ruins of the former research institute, and sure enough, Tipo is there. Exodus has ripped out his soul or whatever, and left this empty husk behind before fleeing. Tipo, as we come to learn, is something called a booster. Boosters are devices that could increase the mana production in the user's brain, allowing for more powerful spirit arts. In Tipo's case, he was a conduit for Elise's thoughts and desires. This is to say, he never really existed. He was always just Elise's repressed personality. This revelation comes as a huge blow to the poor girl, as she realizes that her best friend was basically just herself. I've heard of playing with yourself, but this is ridiculous. Is this thing on? Returning to Jurgen's place in Shandu, the party prepares to take the wyverns, but something isn't sitting right with Mila. The research institute was state-sponsored, meaning the king of Anjou must have known about the children kidnapping and the experiments they were conducting there. She suggests they take a detour to go seek an audience with the king and get some answers.
Mankind wasn't meant to wield such power. It would destroy the world as we know it.
Surrender yourselves into my service. That is your duty as my subjects.
You are beyond salvation.
I'm through wasting my time with you.
I request that you stand down.
Let's put an end to this.
The capital of Aljul is the snowy city of Cambalar. I like winter-themed areas in RPGs. We all remember how cozy Flanor was in Symphonia, but for some reason, Cambalar gives off very different vibes. On the surface, it's very cozy. Cobblestone streets, cute little gondolas, and a town square that could probably host a giant Christmas tree. The sort that inspires a blonde workaholic to say no to her boss and instead spend Christmas Eve with her loved ones. And she probably says something stupid like, "Why aren't you looking at the tree?" And then he says something stupid like, "Because I finally found something to look at the way you look at that tree." Did I only watch this Hallmark Channel Christmas special because this actor and I both share the same Lucky Jean flannel button-up? Yes. Is that the sort of thing that only I would find interesting and doesn't add anything to the video's narrative? Also, yes. But despite all of this, Kambalar is kind of a gloomy place. The threat of full-scale war between Azul and Rashigal feels even more real in the nation's capital, and the revelation about Tipo has also cast a dark cloud over a relatively lighthearted adventure. Tipo has reverted back to his base form. He doesn't show any warmness towards Elise, and that's because he's just a manifestation of her own thoughts. And right now, she's keenly aware that he isn't a real person. Elise throws what could be charitably called a tantrum.
Shut up, Leia. You're the one holding us all back after all.
You smug motherfucker.
Man, you gotta feel for Leia here. She already suffers from an inferiority complex, and the story's cast keeps treating her like Meg Griffin. But I also feel for Elise here as well. Besides losing a friend, she also probably feels incredibly foolish, like realizing the girl you've been flirting with online was an AI chatbot this entire time, trying to fish you for data, and also make you pay child support. Elise eventually apologizes after some advice from Rowan. Good old peace-loving Rowan. As time goes on and she heals from this, we also start to see Tipo slowly reverting back to the personality we're familiar with. Of course, now that we, the audience, have better context, the conversations between Elise and Tipo become less cute and more akin to Gollum talking to himself. But maybe something that will give Elise some closure is learning what the king knows about the Labrie Institute and the child kidnappings. King Gaius is a popular figure, and the townsfolk are constantly inspired by his bravery and willingness to listen to their concerns. But when the party finally gets an audience with him, it's hard to make heads or tails of his intentions. He asks Mila about her mission and pontificates about what it means to be truly happy. Mila says that it's being free to make your own choices, but the king disagrees. He says that true happiness is knowing you're on the right path in life, and as a leader, it's his job to make sure his citizens stay on that path. I can't really find fault necessarily in his argument, but it's clear this guy thinks a little too highly of himself. It's certainly not helped by his cheesy, deep voice.
I must keep them from becoming completely trapped.
Gaius is such a boy boss. Sorry, Travis Willingham. I know you're a good voice actor, and it's nothing against you, it's just that my son is obsessed with Sonic the Hedgehog right now, and all I hear when Gaius talks is Knuckles.
Brace yourself, my friend, because there's nothing but sunny skies ahead for this.
Gaius and Mila's conversation about happiness gives Jude some pause. It makes him question whether he's been blindly following Mila this whole time, and if he's been using his own free will at all. I mean, how is he any different than Ivor? Has Jude been the real fuckboy all along? Speaking of Ivor, I should probably remind the viewer that he was the one entrusted with the key to the Lance of Kresnik. Gaius demands that the party hand over the key, believing himself to be the only one responsible enough to keep it safe. Alvin then seemingly betrays the group by blabbing about Ivor having it.
Traitor!
It's at this point that Pressa arrives to inform her king that Rashigal has just invaded Hamil. To which Gaius pauses for a moment before continuing to read The Pet Goat.
Strategery.
I don't know if I've mentioned Pressa yet, so let's take a quick detour. She's one of Gaius's 4 acolytes, a group formerly called the Kamiriad. Making up the group is Zhao, the giant that we first met taking care of Elise and Hamil. Agria was the psycho Yangari we met at the start of the game, and Wingle, the right hand to Gaius. Zhao represents the goat because of his great offensive capabilities. Wingle represents the dragon because of his cunning. Agria represents the snake because of her poisonous nature and evasiveness. And Pressa represents the Chimera's big tits. Upon the news of Hamil's invasion, Gaius officially declares that Azul is at war with Rashigal. He exits, leaving Wingle to speak to the party. Wingle is a huge edgelord douche who thinks he's better than everyone, especially Rowan. He just can't stand that there's another military leader more capable than he is.
If I had led Azul into battle, we would have won. That is what I will prove here today.
Back off! I'll take you on!
Now, as to the whole reason why they went to see Gaius to begin with, unfortunately it was brushed away by the king. He had claimed to know nothing about the child kidnapping and experiments, but Wingle, on the other hand, definitely does. We learned that he was too once a child captive of that facility, and he had a booster injected into his brain. Knowing how powerful these boosters are, he orders the guards to arrest the party to grab Tipo. Who would have thought this annoying sock puppet was going to be such a prized commodity?
Bazoongas!
Our heroes flee the castle, but are stopped by their pursuers. This leads to a boss fight with Pressa and Wingle. When Wingle activates the booster in his head, he turns into like a super-powered, silver-haired version of himself that can speak in an ancient language. I don't know, man. It just sounds like Chinese to me.
He said something to me in Chinese. Like,
Bulbasaur sounds like some cartoon shit.
This won't be the last time you fight the Chimeriad, and they never really serve much of a point other than to be an obstacle. But hey, beating your asses is a good way to gain experience and level up, so I can't complain. Alvin regroups with the party in Shandu, and they're naturally reluctant to trust him, especially Elise, who's always been vocal about how much she dislikes him. He insists that he gave Gaius bad intel, telling him Ivor and the key were somewhere far away from Neokira to send them in the wrong direction and buy our heroes time. He was actually helping them, right? Right? At this point in the story, I don't know if I believe that, and the others feel just as skeptical, but without having hard evidence of a definite betrayal, they have no choice but to welcome him back like so much Lando Calrissian. Okay, you could come back with us, but you'd better not try anything. Wait, you're wearing Han's clothes now? Really pushing it, buddy. Really pushing it. Jurgen makes good on his promise and lets Jude and friends borrow the Wyverns. Normally this would be the part of the game where we've unlocked true free play of the world map, allowing us to visit secret locations and fly our sick-ass flying devices in unison. But because there's no world map exploration, we'll just have to settle with an animated cutscene instead. The party flies the Wyverns just a few miles outside of Fenmont so they could dismount them and then sneak into the city on foot. The narrative makes a real point to emphasize that if they were simply to fly their Wyverns into the city, they'd immediately be spotted by Rashigal troops and shot down. Xillia is nice enough to clarify details like this once in a while, rather than risk the scorn of fans angrily declaring plot holes. If Tolkien had had this foresight, we wouldn't still be dealing with nerds saying, well, why didn't they just take the Eagles to Mordor then? When writing for this video, I considered for a moment if I had shoehorned enough Lord of the Rings references into the script, but then I thought, no, of course I could add even more. You could call me DJ Khalid, because here's another one. Pretty shortly before the party arrives, there was a massive explosion at the research building, where we first saw the Lance at the start of the game. This distraction allows for Jude to wander about town without the guards really noticing him. Muddin! Fresh muddin! Hey! Are any of you sons of bitches gonna buy my fucking muddin or what? It's a bit surreal coming back to Fenmont, and especially when witnessing how Jude's former friends react to seeing him. A handful of them are curious about what he's been up to, but the majority of them have turned their back on Jude, not wanting to get into trouble themselves. And also half the NPCs never had their dialogue updated, so they're still saying the same shit they were saying at the start of the game. Like I said, Xillia is not going to win any awards for its NPCs. While exploring town, we run into Agria, the girl in red from the start of the game, and one of Gaius's lackeys. We learn that as a spy for Gaius, she was originally sent to steal the lance, but was interrupted by Jude and Mila. She just came back to Fenmont to try again, but she was too late as Rashigal troops had already moved the lance elsewhere, forcing her to set off an explosion in the building as a distraction to escape. Mila extends an olive branch to her, explaining that if they were both trying to destroy the weapon, then that should make them allies, right? But Agria's not into it.
Please, you want to destroy it for the same reason we do, right? 'Cause it's dangerous?
You reek.
We get another chance to fight the girl in red, and it's always cathartic when RPGs let you come back and take on enemies that were previously unbeatable. Really makes you feel like a big, strong man, you know? Beating up this skinny teenage girl with mental health issues. Which, as I'm saying that out loud, doesn't sound like much of a flex at all. Beating her in battle, I think, gives Agria a very slight respect for Jude, so she tells him where they can find the Lance of Kresnik, and then she scurries away like a bug. Jiminy fucking cricket. What is this, The Conjuring? Rashigal's super weapon, unsurprisingly, was moved to Orda Palace, where King Noctigal rules from. And luckily for us, it's like, right there. It's just like right down the street. I don't know if I was just oblivious at the start of the playthrough of Xillia or what, but I don't know how I ever missed this massive castle in the background. Orda Palace is beautifully ornate, soaked in gold and green hues, and carved into a giant mythical tree like something out of Rivendell.
Another one.
Jude mentions how easy it was to break into the palace, and the story seems to be strongly implying that they're gonna be walking into a trap, but then nothing ever comes of it. It was just easy to get into. That's all there is to it. This is another point of contention I have with Xillia's story. Like I said earlier, the main plot is really interesting, but the mechanics they use to advance the plot often feel lazy and cheap. Why was it so easy to break into Noctigal's palace? Because it just was. Stop asking questions. We've got like 20 hours of gameplay left. Shut up. On the top floor is the throne room, and it's an appropriately epic location for such a confrontation. It reminds me a lot of Palpatine's throne room from Return of the Jedi. Big empty room, giant windows, singular chair. You've got to wonder how a dictator spends his time in a room like that between meetings. Stare out the window? Imagine being a Fenmont resident and offhandedly noticing, like, way off in the distance, the literal king of your country just staring at you from the window of his tower with a bored look on his face and his pants by his ankles. No, I'm kidding. Noctigal's not a deep character, and that becomes more and more clear as he waxes on about how he deserves to rule over both mankind and spirits as well, due to no really compelling reason other than that he's sick and badass. You know you're gearing up for an especially difficult fight when every one of the party members exposits what their individual motives for fighting are.
Once I believed that you and I were two friends who traveled along the same path in life. However, now it seems we've reached our journey's end.
I can't believe that someone like this could be our king! It's time someone knocked some sense in you!
Jude and Mila and everyone! I have to protect my friends!
It's an old trope, but it still checks out. And it's usually reserved for a final battle, but I've played enough Tales games to know a mid-game psych-out boss when I see one. This dude ain't really the main antagonist, is he? Nevertheless, this battle with the King of Rashigal was easily the most challenging and fun fight I experienced in the whole game. He is such a beast, he wiped me out in about 10 seconds on my first try. This battle seems to be Xillia's litmus test for the player, making sure you have every facet of the battle system mastered, because mindless button mashing ain't gonna work this time. You need to evade, take advantage of weaknesses, use items strategically, and chain link with the right party members. In this case, Rowan seemed to work the best, and the game seems to indicate this by having special battle dialogue between Rowan and his former friend. I love it when games have special dialogue for certain party members during boss fights. Fire Emblem used to be the best example of this, and it's so much more satisfying to defeat the bad guy with a thematically appropriate party member, you know? The Noctigal fight also introduces the player to Mystic Arts, which is usually a late game mechanic in Tales games, and basically it's an ultimate move. I found using the Beast Art to knock him over before he could cast his Mystic Art to be a pretty effective strategy. I could go on and on about this fight, but I'll just say that it's a testimony to how complex the battle system in the Tales series is, and how it never feels cheap. I felt like I was fighting an actual human opponent who was fighting for his life as much as I was. After the battle, Rowan extends an olive branch to his old friend, imploring him one last time to turn from the dark side. He says they could face justice for their crimes together. Noctigal is like, hey, you know what? Maybe you've got a point, and is promptly killed by ice magic from an unknown assailant. We soon discover that whoever killed Noctigal also stole the lance from the palace. My money is on Gilland, Noctigal's right-hand man, who's made a few brief appearances so far. Every RPG enthusiast knows the real endgame bad guy is always the second in command, using their boss as a puppet.
That Alvin is so dreamy. I just wish he'd stop betraying us. If he betrays us 4 or 5 more times, then we'll have to seriously reconsider this relationship. Tales of Xillia will be right back. Wait, Leia is the last party member? So we only get 6 characters? What is this, a Tales game for ants? The Xillia retrospective starts now.
After fleeing the palace, the party soon learns that Gaius is leading the Azul army against Rashigal for control of the Lance of Kresnik, which has been taken by Gilland, Noctigal's right-hand man. I freaking knew it! Gilland's taken the lance to the Fezzible Marsh, the location where a similar battle between Rashigal and Azul took place years prior. Rowan, without hesitation, steps into a leadership role for the Rashigal army. It's really cool seeing Rowan in his element, and how the Rashigalians respect him as a decorated veteran. But it doesn't take long for Gilland to spoil it. He waits for our party to be entrenched in battle before revealing that Jude and their friends killed the king. So now we're fighting both Azul and Rashigalian troops. Man, we just can't catch a break, can we? The Battle of the Fezzible Marsh continues to have plenty of twists and turns. Too many to cover, really, but I'll try. You'll fight the Chimeriad, try to convince Gaius to abandon his plans to take over the Lance so he could use it as a nuclear deterrent, but he can't see past his big dumb man hubris. And Ivor shows up with a key to the Lance and activates it after being tricked by Gilland because, well, Ivor's an idiot. After this, quite a lot of confusing and dramatic things happen in rapid succession. Many of these things are retroactively explained as the story progresses, and the remainder of this video is all gonna be spoiler territory, so don't say I didn't warn you. The Lance fires into the air and breaks what appears to be an invisible magical barrier in the sky. It turns out that all of Rieze Maxia has had a magical dome over it. We learn that this whole time they've been completely isolated from and oblivious about the outside world. Not unlike that Stephen King story or my dad watching Fox News all day. Quick detour, let me give you a refresher on mana and spirits because none of this will make any sense otherwise. So normally a spirit feeds off of humans' mana and grants that human supernatural gifts in exchange, but humans that can't produce mana could cheat the system by using a Spirex. Spirexes are bad because they draw on spirit power without offering mana in exchange. This over time will kill the spirit because it's giving up energy without getting anything in return. Basically, humans that can't produce mana are akin to non-creatives using generative AI to make soulless artificial art instead of hiring an actual artist, thus contributing to society's freefall in culture and taste. But anyways. Thousands of years ago, Spirex became so widespread and rampant that the spirits were in danger of extinction. This is when Maxwell stepped in. She gathered all the mana-producing humans into one area and sealed it off with a magical barrier. This continent, isolated from the rest of the world, would become Rieze Maxia. So Rieze Maxia was essentially the quarantine zone, with Olympios, the outside world, doomed to die off someday from their own bad decisions. Mila put up the barrier called the Schism and has kept it a secret from Jude and the rest of society. But Exodus is fully aware of the Schism, and that's because... Are you ready for a great plot twist? Because they're from Olympios. About 2 decades earlier, a cruise ship from Olympios accidentally slipped through a crack in the Schism, sort of a Bermuda Triangle situation, and it wound up in Rieze Maxia. Alvin and his family were on that ship and suddenly became refugees in a strange land. Alvin's uncle at some point figured out that the Schism was created by Maxwell. He created the group Exodus, made up of other Olympian refugees from the cruise ship, with the sole intent to kill Maxwell, break her spell over the Schism, and return home. If you haven't guessed it yet, Alvin's uncle is none other than Gilland. Suddenly, Exodus is seeming a lot more sympathetic. Sure, they were trying to kill Mila, but just so they could get home, right? Well, it gets more complicated. Gilland, over the years, wormed his way into King Noctigal's inner circle and convinced him to order the construction of the Lance of Kresnik. Noctigal was only focused on attacking Rajul, but Gilland had something even bigger in mind. He wanted to solve Olympios' energy crisis by snatching up civilians from Rieze Maxia and bringing them to Olympios to be used as fuel. He needed the help of the Olympian army to do this, thus using the Lance of Kresnik to blast a hole in the Schism big enough for several Olympian warships to enter. Now, you might be asking yourself, how was he able to communicate with the Olympian government when he was stuck on Rieze Maxia? And why did Exodus give up their goal of killing Mila as a means to dispel the Schism? And the answer to that is, I don't know. These sort of details are not explained well. Let my ass know in the comments section if you have an idea. So what happens next is Michael J. Fox is turned into a werewolf, but believe it or not, this doesn't hinder his ability to play basketball. And in fact, he's able to dunk now. Wait, wrong script. Olympian troops start landing and attacking everyone. In the chaos, Elise is almost snatched up, but she's saved by Zhao, who shortly after drops the bombshell that he was responsible for her parents' death. Since then, he's tried to honor her parents' legacy by protecting her. Zhao then pulls a Goofy from Kingdom Hearts 2 and takes on an entire enemy army by himself, allowing his friends time to escape. I'm sorry, I know this is a serious moment. With the chaos going on, the party gets separated. Jude falls into a giant hole and somehow wakes up in an icy tundra. Really not sure how that happened, but here we are. It's about this point that Michael J. Fox tells his best friend that he has a secret he needs to confess. His friend asks if he's gay, and Michael assures him that no, he's just a werewolf. Because in the 80s, it was worse to be gay than to be a werewolf. It was definitely a different time, but hey, wait a minute, I'm getting sidetracked. In the snowy tundra, Jude meets a spirit woman named Muse, who asks if she could join him on his mission to destroy the Lance of Kresnik. In order to establish a bond, Muse suggests that she and Jude form a spirit tether, which seems innocent enough, if not for the weirdly sexual tone. As the story goes on, Jude and Muse direct tethering actually becomes a running gag, with Mila getting jealous when she finds out.
Jude, you direct tethered with her?
We were on a break!
Jude stumbles across his friends while exploring an ice cave. Oh god, we're gonna have to do that sliding across the ice puzzle, aren't we?
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Muse is basically the anti-Mila. She's affable, goofy, vapid, and doesn't seem particularly bothered or driven by anything.
Oh, aqua dragons. What a menacing display.
What are you smiling about? This isn't a petting zoo.
Muse tries to introduce herself as Mila's older sister, but Mila claims she has no knowledge of ever having a sibling. Well, that seems awfully suspicious. Guess we should keep an eye on that. Speaking of suspicious, the party isn't crazy about Alvin right now, after all the havoc his uncle has wreaked. But once again, Alvin smooth talks his way into everyone's good graces. The way everyone keeps forgiving him, they should just call this game Tales of Graces. While Gaius was distracted on the battlefield, Gillen sent the Olympian troops into Cambalar to take over the Rajul capital. Our next meeting with Gaius is considerably less hostile, and he begrudgingly accepts that he and Jude have a common enemy. After devising a plan to take back the capital, both groups take a night to rest and reflect on the upcoming battle. This is also an opportunity to get to know Gaius's motley crew a little better. It's strongly implied that Pressa and Alvin used to be in a relationship, but things must have went sour at some point. Wingus, the tactician of the group, has a lot of penis envy towards Rowan and his military accomplishments. He's kind of an insufferable edgelord, to be honest. Then there's Agria. She's pretty intolerable too, with her scenery-chewing crazy girl shtick.
I'll kill you first!
Whatever. Damn it! You have to be kidding me!
But when you learn about her tragic past, her dramatics are somewhat forgivable. Honestly, Pressa is probably the most tolerable of the three, but I just can't take her seriously in that outfit. It'd be one thing if she was just visiting Cambalar, but this is her home. This is her default outfit for the snow. The next day, Jude and Gaius successfully take back the city and manage to hop aboard an Olympian airship as well. Now, if we had a proper world map, this would also be an appropriate vessel by which to unlock free roam, but instead, we get an uninspired gauntlet of battles, and it just feels like wasted potential. Our heroes take over the vessel and use it to follow Gillen to his own ship, the ESS Zenethra. This is the same cruise ship that brought him and Alvin to Riza Maxia, and appropriately, he's made it Mother Base for Exodus. I wasn't really sure what to expect when boarding the Zenethra. Would we finally get the answers we seek? Would we finally destroy the Lance of Kresnik this time? Would Alvin give us some insight about his uncle and what created a wedge between them? I wasn't really sure, but the one thing I can tell you is that I definitely wasn't expecting acid jazz. That's got some stink on it. I've hesitated to talk about the music in Tales of Xillia, but I guess I should just get this out of the way. Xillia might not be my favorite soundtrack in the Tales series, but it is my least favorite. Motoi Sakuraba is the M. Night Shyamalan of video game composers. He's made a lot of hits, and he's made even more stinkers. But the hits that he did make were so good that I'll forever be endeared to him, regardless of the fact that the good to shit ratio is aggressively lopsided. I mean, this son of a bitch made the Golden Sun soundtrack, so I'll never hate him. Plus, in all fairness, the last big JRPG I played was Persona 3 Reload, which ended up having my favorite video game soundtrack of all time, and as a 30-something-year-old, it takes a lot to change your all-time favorite of anything, so that's saying something. Anything after Persona 3 was gonna come up short, but Xillia... Oh, Xillia. The victory theme is exceptional. It's so joyous and gives off an unmistakable bro energy. If fist-bumping your best friend after coming first place in a hot dog eating contest was a song, it'd be this. And I generally like Jude's battle theme. It's not the most memorable battle theme in a Tales game, but it's far from the worst. Sakuraba loves his guitar-driven rock ballads that inspire a sense of both urgency and giddy excitement. In fact, I'd say battle music is where his strengths really lie the most. The boss theme is extremely stressful. The orchestra moves at an exhausting pace, the cymbals clashing activates your fight or flight response, and the tremolo strings throughout instills a creeping dread. It's a great, oh shit, I really regret not saving my game before I enter this boss fight type of song. Fenmont's music works really well for your typical RPG starting village tune, but also has a somber, majestic quality that fits the city itself nicely. The combination of playful pizzicato strings, a sweeping, hopeful sounding melody, and angelic heart plucking perfectly fits the very specific vibe of a royal academy and perpetual night. I mean, Sakuraba could make a tune so specific that without even knowing the game, you could hear it and go, oh, is that a song for nighttime at a school? Yes, it is. So when the Xillia composer wants to make a good melody and convey a certain feeling, he absolutely can. The problem is that this dude was making like 4 other game soundtracks the same year Xillia was released, and damn, if most of the soundtrack doesn't sound like rushed generic dookie.
What's that smell?
Take the theme from Niakira, for instance. It's alright. Sounds like your typical Eastern peasant summoner village affair, but now listen to the theme of Kambalar. Okay, now listen to the theme of Zandu. Are you seeing the pattern? Yes, they're all basically the same song. And I get it. All these locations are for Jewel locations specifically, and Sakuraba was creating a cultural leitmotif, and that's great, but it still sucks, and it's still boring, and I still hate it. The ESS Zenenthra is kind of the last proper dungeon in Xillia, at least the last one the developers put any effort into. There's no particular puzzle here, just the goal of navigating its maze-like structure, but it's entertaining enough. The Zenenthra is an oddly humanizing place. Exodus isn't exactly a nebulous terrorist cell, they're a bunch of men and women and children that got shipwrecked on vacation. And the fact that they continued staying on the ship all these years later is a testimony to their desire to hold on to a piece of their home. Gillen was prepared for a fight with anyone who might try to take the lance away, so he's armed himself with an artificial spirit called Celsius. He tells them that she was made from a developing technology called a spyrite. Rather than stealing energy from a spirit like a Spirex would do, the spyrite instead resurrects a once-dead spirit from a fossil that's been infused with mana. This essentially allows Olympians, who again can't produce mana from their own brains, to have a copacetic relationship with spirits, a give and take, but just using a fossil as fuel for the spirit rather than their brains. Where, you might ask, do Olympians get this mana to infuse into the spirit fossils? I really don't know, man. I took notes during the gameplay, I researched it online, I can't find an answer. I tried. I'm sure it was mentioned in the game, but I just can't tell you. I'm sorry.
Shame!
Gillen hopes that Spyrites will be the future of Olympios, freeing them of their destructive reliance on Spyrex. This in itself doesn't seem bad at all, but the party seems weirdly unsympathetic to him here. I can understand the anger towards him. After all, it was his idea to send Olympian soldiers to Riza Maxia to kidnap civilians and bring them back as a fuel source. That's obviously evil, but even that was an act of desperation to save his world from imminent doom. Regardless, Mila basically tells him that Olympios made its bed with Spyrex and that they should lie in it. Gillen's last words are a frustrating cry that he's not responsible for the mistakes society at large made thousands of years ago. And hey, he's right. But I guess it doesn't matter now because he's dead. Mila draws the 4 great spirits from the Lance of Kresnik. It seems like there's finally nothing stopping us from destroying this stupid thing already. But, surprise motherfucker, another plot twist. Before Mila could destroy it, the entire room begins to shake and collapse. Someone is using a powerful gravity magic on the whole Zenethra ship, and it's crushing everything and everyone inside of it. Jude, Gaius, and the rest aren't able to move, but if someone doesn't do something quick, it might mean certain death for everyone. Mila figures out that now, the only way to save everyone is to activate the lance. The weapon neutralizes spirit arts, so whoever is casting the gravity spell would have their mana depleted, and our party would have a chance to escape. Mila decides to be a hero and be the one to turn on the weapon, and I suppose she'd be taking the brunt of the damage from it due to proximity, although that isn't really made clear. What is clear is that turning it on will definitely kill Mila. You've got to appreciate the irony here. She started her journey wanting to destroy the lance so she could save the world. Now, she's gonna die saving her friends by using it. Everyone cries out for her to reconsider, especially Jude, who's desperately pleading that he doesn't want to live without her. It's a heartbreaking scene, but Mila knows she's doing the right thing and she can't be talked out of it. The lance lets out a blast of energy, which kills Mila and stops the gravity spell, but the damage is already done. Zenethra begins sinking into the ocean, and outside, we discover that the villain trying to kill everyone was... Muse? Really? Okay, this game officially has too many bad guys now. Xillia isn't on the same level as Symphonia when it comes to its reliance on obtuse plot twist after obtuse plot twist.
If it weren't for my sister's wishes to spare your life, I'd kill you right now.
But it's still frustratingly convoluted sometimes. First Noctigal was the main threat, then the Chimeriad, then Gaius, then Gilland, and now Muse? There's too many different villains with too many different agendas, and I can't keep up. I need a break. I'm gonna go finish watching Teen Wolf. So to conclude my review of Teen Wolf, Michael J. Fox wins the big basketball game and gets the girl. There's an urban legend that an extra in the background pulls his dick out, and I want to investigate, so let's play the clip. And when we zoom in here, we'll see that it's not a dick at all. It's... wait a minute. Oh my god, it's Muse!
They better not have killed Mila for good. I gave her all my best equipment and power-ups. Life can be so unfair sometimes. Tales of Xillia will be right back. And now for the final act. Tales of Xillia continues now.
When asked about creating a memorable cast, series producer Hideo Baba said, "For the Tales series, it's important that players are able to see a part of themselves in the characters that are represented in the game. If there isn't someone they could really relate to, then they won't be able to get any fun out of it." Then he added, "Also, it'd be cool if you could play as a pipe-smoking dog. That shit would be tight." Our party in Xillia ranges from all ends of the spectrum, and while I didn't find anyone that relatable, I did appreciate the ebbs and flows of their personal journeys. Rowan was not only able to confront his old friend turned nemesis, but when the two nations of Riza Maxia went to war, he was able to come out of retirement and draw upon his tactician experience, and even make better decisions this time around. Leia was excited to go on a journey and see the world. She had some doubts about being a liability, but eventually found confidence in herself, and her motivation shifted from wanting to impress Jude to wanting to improve herself for her own sake. Elise was an incredibly shy girl who needed her doll to speak for her, but then she finds in a group the family she never had, and in time, her voice as well. She's kind of a brat to Leia, and she's antagonistic to Alvin, but at least now she's confident enough to vocalize her feelings without relying on Tipo. For all intents and purposes, Rowan, Leia, and Eliza's stories are all wrapped up neatly with a bow. If you are interested in learning more about these characters though, and their backstories, Xillia does a good job fleshing them out even more through optional skits and side quests for those that care enough to go down those rabbit holes. That just leaves Jude, Alvin, and Mila, whom the second half of the story focuses more heavily on. I found Jude and Alvin to be the real heart of the story and the most developed of the cast. Mila, not so much. About 30 hours in, and my initial impression of Mila hasn't changed much. It's not like she hasn't grown at all, She started off with little respect for humans and their plight, but gained some insight after losing her spirithood and journeying with the party. She sees the consequence of pushing herself too hard when she gets paralyzed from her fight with Noctigal, and is somewhat humbled from it. There is some character development, but it's just not that much. Mila's biggest strength is also her biggest weakness, narratively speaking at least. She might be the cornerstone of which the story is built, and her steadfast resolve to save the world is the catalyst for several characters, especially Jude, to grow, but the problem is her resolve is never questioned, and her spirithood makes her unrelatable. Imagine a Jesus Christ that never wept, never had doubts about his crucifixion. He certainly wouldn't be that empathetic of a character, would he? And since the story seems so dead set on making a Christ allegory in Mila, the least they could have done is have gotten the allegory right. If Mila isn't overcoming fear or internal weakness, then her bravery isn't bravery at all. She's just a robot. In short, I wasn't endeared. From the start of his adventure, Jude's just been trying to do the right thing, even though that meant sacrificing the normal life he wanted. He was able to find the courage to do this by following Mila's example, but now that she's gone, he's feeling rudderless, and he's gonna have to learn to stand on his own 2 feet. But for now, Jude hasn't been dealing with Mila's death very well, and in the weeks following, we see that he's fallen hard into a depression. Leia is taking care of him in Hamil, and Jude is just being the most insufferable little bitch imaginable.
Get that cone out of my face!
Again? Jude, you gotta stop doing this. If you keep this up, we're gonna run out of food. I'll make you some more. Be right back.
Don't make his ass some more food, you're being an enabler. Jude's acting like a real my stepfather Kevin after he's had a few cold ones with the boys. Leia, for her part, is doing the best she can to lift Jude out of his rut. She tells him, "Hey Jude, don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. That he should always remember to let Mila into his heart, and then he could start to make it better." I've been waiting since the start of the video to make that joke, and it feels so good to get that out of my system. We learn a lot about the last 2 weeks from flashbacks. Muse has had a dramatic heel turn, going from affable, charming goofball to sadistic mass murderer, killing anyone who's become aware of the schism, like some sort of supernatural government hitman.
Facial recognition got a hit.
Jesus Christ, it's Musette born! Tales of Xillia was an infamously rushed game, with the developers trying their best to get it released by the series' 15th anniversary. Hideo Baba said as much, claiming that certain Tales staples had to get cut for time, like a hot springs section, extra side quests, and Gaius and Muse as the last 2 playable characters, which makes sense since usually Tales games have 8 protagonists, not 6. To me, the first half of the game didn't feel unfinished at all, but the second half did show some of its cracks. It was pretty unsatisfying seeing Muse abruptly turn into a villain, and these flashback scenes almost seem like the writers retroactively patching plot holes left over from cut content. It's a shame, but not the end of the world. Alvin's true motives and morality has always been a point of contention in Xillia, with several party members unsure if they could trust him or not. And for good reason. As a mercenary, he sold out the party for his own benefit more than once.
Alvin!
But we also know that in large part, the bad things he does has been for the sake of taking care of his sick mother. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say, and Xillia spends a lot of time teasing whether or not Alvin will end up on the right side of things. But with this next scene, there's very little moral ambiguity. You see, Alvin has been hired by Muse to straight up murder Jude, and he is fully prepared to do it. Jude, still in the maw of depression, doesn't resist. Fortunately, he has a good friend like Leia to fight on his behalf. Things start to get dark real fast. Leia runs away, dragging Jude along, as Alvin chases after them with a gun. These are characters that used to all like each other and get along, and now it's suddenly become a horror movie. Leia tries to smack some sense into her despondent friend. She tells him that Mila would have wanted Jude to live on and carry on her ideals, or else her death would have been in vain. Jude snaps out of it just in time to see Alvin fucking shoot Leia dead. Damn, bro, that's ice cold. I guess that special handshake meant nothing to you. Actually, Alvin shot her accidentally, but I mean, what was he expecting? Jude takes out his aggression with his fists, and Alvin is so guilt-ridden he doesn't put up a fight. Jude forgives Alvin, but it's with a heavy heart, still full of resentment for his former friend.
Mila saved your rotten life. Don't be so eager to just throw it away. Don't you get it? Mila died because She wanted us to live! She didn't die so we'd end up like this.
Alvin is shocked by Jude being the bigger person, and Leia is just rotting in the corner and some wild animals try dragging her body away. Actually, Leia's just fine. Her wound is never really even addressed beyond Jude nursing her back to health. Oh hey, Jude's apparently able to heal people from bullet wounds using only rest and chicken soup. Somebody tell Governor Klein. Oh. When Leia recovers, Jude apologizes for acting like a real my stepfather Kevin after the Patriots fumbled the big game. She forgives him and more or less confesses her feelings for Jude by telling him that he was always the reason she trained so hard. Jude is like, I love you too. As a friend. First he disrespects her cooking, then Alvin shoots her, now this shit? Leia really is the Meg of the group, poor girl.
Hey Meg, you got something on your shirt.
Hi, Dad.
Now, it's important that I explain certain plot points for any of the following to make sense because the game really rushes through explaining it. Exodus's whole goal was to kill Mila in order to break the schism. After all, if she cast the spell, killing her would undo it, right? Well, to everyone's surprise, killing Mila didn't dispel the schism, so it could be concluded that Mila was never really Maxwell at all. Jude is the first to figure this out, and so he decides to go on a journey to find the real Maxwell and get some answers.
You're a phony! Hey everybody! This guy's a great big phony!
Along the way, he reunites with Rowan and Elise, and they all head to Fenmont, where Gaius has set up shop. Since Noctigal's death, Gaius has stepped in to unite both Rashigal and Azul against the new threat of the Olympian soldiers crossing into their world. The Olympian soldiers are desperately attempting to kidnap Rhys Maxians and bring them back home in order to use their mana as fuel for their world. Out of the chaos, Gaius has essentially made himself the king of all Rhys Maxia, and there's no one left to oppose him. Despite Gaius's obvious despotic power grab and the fact that he's still surrounded by sycophants who keep trying to kill our heroes, Jude still trusts Gaius enough to ask for help. Our heroes accompany Gaius on the open sea, where he's trying to fish out the Lance of Kresnik from the underwater wreckage of their last battle. He tells them that his goal is to use the lance against Olympios as a show of force to stop their invasion. Gaius's men excavate the lance from the ocean when they're suddenly attacked by Musée, who's soaring over the water like a fucking demon. After a tough boss battle, she escapes, and both our heroes and Gaius make chase. We get separated from Gaius just long enough for Wingle to once again go behind his master's back and try to murder Jude and friends. What a weakness. The search for Gaius and Musée then takes the party to Mila's old shrine, where they run into an inconsolable Ivor, who blames Jude for Mila's death, which in turn leads to another boss fight. Man, I can appreciate the challenge of a good old-fashioned boss gauntlet, but this is starting to get ridiculous. What's next, a boss fight with Jurgen because he's mad we never returned his wyverns? Jude has always been the bigger man and turned the other cheek, and this has finally gotten through to Ivor and softened his heart, so he helps the party by pointing them in the right direction. Musée is at the top of a craggy mountain called the Niakira Holomont. She's been crying out to her god, Maxwell, but hasn't received any response in some time. She had killed so many people in his name, and she's been losing her mind trying to reconcile committing such atrocities for a god that won't even pick up the phone. The Holomont is unique for having a portal that connects Rhys Maxia to the spirit world, and Musée intends to use it to see her boss in person. I'm sad to see that the Holomont isn't much of a dungeon at all, with no unique puzzles or anything special about it. Xillia really starts to give up with the dungeon design near the end of the game, opting instead for boss battle after boss battle to pad out the time. At the summit, Jude and the rest are confronted by Pressa and Agria, who've been instructed by Gaius to guard the portal and keep them out. Alvin's there too. He's still working for Musée and still has orders to kill Jude. Rowan tries to convince the mercenary that it's never too late to change your ways, and Alvin does his best to diffuse tension between the two groups. But when it's clear that neither side will budge, Alvin is forced to finally choose where his loyalties lie. And, fortunately for us, it's on the side of goodness. After a fight to the death, Pressa admits to Alvin she still loves him and wishes him goodwill before dying. On the other end of the spectrum, Agria rejects Leia's help and goes out flipping everyone off. This middle finger was censored in the original English release of the game for reasons I really can't wrap my brain around, like Pressa's whole deal is fine, but a finger is where we start clutching our pearls? Come on. Despite the many betrayals, Jude begrudgingly asks Alvin to rejoin the party. Alvin is still racked with guilt, and he does his best to offer a genuine apology. It finally feels like this time it's for real, and we're done with all the double crossing. He apologizes to Leia especially, and she forgives him as well. She isn't quick to forget what he did, but it does seem like they're on the right path to eventually mend their relationship. With the portal to the spirit world before you, the game warns you that going through the portal might mean not coming back, so this seems like a good time to accomplish some of the side quests we've been procrastinating with in Res Maxia.
It is the duty of the strong to ensure that the weak do not perish.
This madness ends right now!
Okay, we finally stopped it.
Everyone all right?
When we last left our heroes, they were walking through the portal into the spirit dimension. They enter an area called the Temporal Crossroads, a freaky otherworldly abyss where Maxwell, the Lord of all spirits, resides all by his lonesome. You gotta wonder how this guy passes the time, you know? I mean, watching the human world and occasionally having sex with the Temporal Crossroad monsters has gotta get old after a while. Maxwell explains that it was he, not Mila, that created the schism thousands of years ago, to segregate Res Maxia from Olympios, with the intended outcome being that Olympios eventually kills itself off due to its abuse of Spyrex. Jude and friends argue that the schism needs to be destroyed. It's created a society of haves and have-nots, with the Olympians waging war against Res Maxia for their mana, and that this wouldn't have happened if not for the artificial division of the schism. Maxwell argues that the Olympians have doomed themselves either way, and that if not for the schism, Res Maxia would have just gotten dragged down too. He speaks about half the world's population in such a cold, heartless way, but it's not without some truth. Maxwell says he gave the Olympians plenty of opportunities to turn away from the Spyrex, but they always chose it anyways. Maxwell comes off as a bit of a prick here, but in fairness, the party also comes off as frustratingly naive. Jude is very much in the "why can't we all just get along" camp, and I couldn't help but empathize with Maxwell frustratingly trying to explain to Jude, "Jude, you clueless hippie, you can't make friends with someone trying to kill you." My empathy for Maxwell, however, dried up pretty quickly after his next revelation. Jude asks him about Mila claiming to be Maxwell, and he explains that he made her, implanted false memories in her like so much Blade Runner android, all so that she would draw out Exodus. One of the major goals of that group was to kill Maxwell so that the schism would be broken and they could return to Olympios. Naturally, Maxwell wasn't too fond of these guys, so he used Mila, a decoy Maxwell essentially, as bait to lure Exodus out into the open where he could then unilaterally eliminate all his enemies via Musée, which was exactly what ended up happening on the ESS Zenenthra. To know that Maxwell considered Mila as simply a tool to be used and disposed of enrages Jude to no end, and this leads to an obviously unwinnable boss fight. It's futile, sure, but you've got to respect the loyalty Mila's friends have for her. This would be like if the 12 apostles went to heaven to beat up God for sacrificing their friend Jesus. "You don't understand, I have a plan!" shouts God as he dodges chairs being thrown by Doubting Thomas and Tiger Blade Sigmas from Simon Peter because he has higher combat arts unlocked. Maxwell keeps wiping out the party, but Jude is unrelenting. He keeps getting back on his feet no matter how hopeless things seem. Jude's bravery seems to be thematically rewarded here with the surprise resurrection of Mila and the Four Great Spirits. She switched sides on the whole schism issue after learning from her friends that humans, even Olympians, can change, and that they deserve the choice to. Another fight with Maxwell proves difficult even with the extra help because he keeps changing his elemental affinity and spamming his mystic arts, which is an unfortunate trend for all the near endgame boss fights. Fortunately, as the difficulty in this game ramps up, so does the experience and gold you'll get rewarded with, not to mention the absolutely crucial items like the revival rings which prevent instant kills. So despite the difficulty ramping up exponentially, Xillia does give the player a plethora of options for how to deal with the challenge. This might include spamming your own mystic arts, which isn't too difficult to pull off, and is always immensely satisfying when you do. Jude absolutely wails on the enemy with his fists. Mila sends an annihilating blast of elemental magic at the opponent. Rowan does that anime trope where he freezes his enemies with ice magic and then snaps his fingers and the ice breaks. It was sexier when Mitsuru did it, but I'll allow it. After kicking God's ass like some misotheist fanfiction, Jude implores Maxwell to reconsider, that Olympians deserve another chance to do the right thing, that they at least deserve to have the option. Maxwell's heart changes, possibly due to Jude's optimism, more likely due to not wanting to get beat up again.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Either way, he agrees to destroy the schism. He explains that the mana making up the schism should spread across the world and keep both Olympios and Res Maxia satiated for a few years. But after that, who knows? Jude makes a promise to Maxwell that humanity will figure out a lasting solution by then. But just then, Mr. freaking Cocky McCockerson shows up and basically tells Maxwell, "Hey, you suck at being God. I'm gonna take your job and be the new God." He's got big Robert California taking Kathy Bates' job and being the new CFO of Dunder Mifflin energy. Yeah, I liked Season 8 just fine. See you haters in the comments section.
You don't even know my real name. I'm the Lizard King.
Gaius isn't convinced that Olympians and Rhysmaxians could coexist peacefully, so he is dead set on keeping the schism in place. I love that Gaius isn't a god or a spirit or anything special, he's just a massive Chad that got all the way here from just pure confidence alone. Musée, feeling betrayed and abandoned by Maxwell, decides to take arms against her creator. One small detail that really bothered me in the story is that we never get any sort of justification from Maxwell why he decided to ghost Musée for so long, other than that he's kind of a dick. Which is as realistic of a reason as it is narratively unsatisfying. Musée uses her dimension-distorting powers to bring the Lance of Kresnik through a portal and shoot Maxwell right in the face with it. The Germans have a word for this, because they have a word for everything. I can't pronounce it, so I'll just say hubris. Maxwell in this moment is brought down by his hubris, and it gave me an immense feeling of schadenfreude, a German word that I can pronounce. The Lance drains Maxwell's mana, which makes him magically sterile. It makes him go through menopause. Gaius has decided to take the fight to Olympios and doesn't want Jude and friends to get in the way. He uses Musée's powers to open a portal to Rhysmaxia in an attempt to trap our heroes there. But it looks like Maxwell's still got a bit of juice in the old mana sack because he uses the last of his powers to open his own portal to Olympios, and he sends our party there instead. I'm sure if you're this far into the video, you're probably also the sort of person who's already beaten Tales of Symphonia, but if you haven't, here's a spoiler warning. When Lloyd and friends discover there's a whole parallel world to theirs called Tetheala, it's a huge revelation, not just for them, but for the player too. The story seemed to be gearing up for an ending, and then suddenly, bam, we're only halfway done. Welcome to World 2. It was an incredibly effective twist, both for narrative and gameplay. Tales of Xillia tries to do something similar, but fumbles the ball worse than Bill Buckner. Yeah, I'll make a sports reference once in a while. See you haters in the comments section next to the Office fans that hated Season 8. You see, Tetheala was equal in scale and significance to Lloyd's home of Silverant. Olympios feels like just kind of a strange afterthought to Rhysmaxia. Let's compare maps. This is Rhysmaxia, and this is Olympios. In Olympios, there are 2 dungeons, 2 fields, and 1 town. And here's where they're going to build a Costco, and hopefully that'll be the start of this area turning into something, you know? But in the meanwhile, this whole continent is astonishingly barren, and it's our biggest and most obvious indication of release date crunch. It seems clear that more of this map was meant to be filled in, but the developers simply ran out of time. It's underwhelming, made even more so by how late in the game we're taken here. Rhysmaxia is huge. They could have taken half the areas from there, redistributed them in Olympios, and then we could have had something interesting. It's just a shame, and just really makes you wonder what could have been. Yeah, it's me, I'm somehow here. Who wants some mutton? Fresh mutton! Olympios itself is aesthetically very different than its mana-producing counterpart. Whereas Rhysmaxia had more of a medieval European vibe that complemented its fantastical, spirit-centered nature, Olympios resembles more of turn-of-the-century New York. It's a post-industrial revolution, and the sky is blotted out by tall buildings, electric towers, and smog. There's basically no nature to be found here, and the areas surrounding major cities are just desolate wastelands. If it wasn't clear by now that Spirixes are a metaphor for fossil fuels, our time in Olympios will eliminate any ambiguity. Alvin's return to Olympios feels bittersweet. On one hand, he spent his whole life trying to get home, but he's also naturally dismayed to see the decay and ruin of this doomed world. He takes the party to go stay with his cousin Balin, who's more than happy to open his home to his long-lost family member. Balin has had a pretty severe limp since childhood, but he's been able to walk normally with the use of a Spyrix device, not unlike the Asperixix that Mila used earlier in the game. This puts some things in perspective for Jude. Olympios is the other side of the coin, the world that chose technology over magic and spirits. Jude could easily heal Balin's leg with spirit arts, but in this world that would be unheard of since no one could produce mana. It's also one of the only times in the story thus far that we've seen a Spirix that isn't some sort of weapon. In fact, it doesn't take but a short expedition through the industrial town of Torbalan that we come to realize that the majority of the Spirixes here are being used for essential and life-saving services. Fueling vehicles, illuminating streetlights, providing power for hospitals and giving relief and mobility to the sick and disabled.
Thanks to the advance in medical Spyrex technology, we've been able to overcome our illnesses. We'll never forget what Dr. Mathis did for us.
Mathis?
Dr. Mathis is the one who created my Spyrex. But he died in a boat accident a long time ago.
That's the same as your last name, Jude.
Their entire civilization relies on Spyrexes in the same way we rely on electricity or clean drinking water or modern medicine. It's an eye-opening moment for Jude and the others, seeing how most of the Olympians are just normal people trying to survive, and talking to the NPCs proves that the majority of them are even against their military invading Res Maxia for their mana. It was easy, at a distance, to say that the Olympians should lay in the bed they've made, but now that we're actually walking amongst these people, it's hard to judge them so harshly. Is it fair to punish an entire civilization for using life-saving technology? It may come at the expense of spirits, but how many of the Olympians even realize that spirits exist at all? After walking a mile in their shoes, Jude is feeling a lot less judgmental about his Olympian neighbors. Getting rid of the Spyrexes suddenly doesn't seem like the right thing to do anymore, not with so many innocent people relying on them. They still aren't sure what the best solution is, but they know that they can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater, which unfortunately is exactly what Gaius wants to do. He's apparently been spotted at the nearby Helioborg research station, so our heroes give chase. Generally speaking, I wasn't a huge fan of Olympios, neither aesthetically nor how late it was introduced into the story, but one thing I can say about it is that it's got some great music. I know I already went into great detail about how much I didn't like Xillia's soundtrack, but how could I hate an entire continent that blasts smooth jazz wherever you go? Seriously, even the desolate plains that surround the city is playing this music that sounds like it would better fit a detective noir than a fantasy RPG. This city, after a while, it does something to you. It changes a man. She came into my office that night, some dame off the streets. She said she needed help finding her no-good two-timing husband. Said this cat had moved to some 2-bit hood called Silverant. And when she said cat, she didn't mean no alley cat. She meant a real furry, tail and all. Now I had heard of everything. I took a drag of my cigarette. Those things will kill ya, she said. Not before this does, I said, reaching for my piece and painting the walls with my brains to end this fucking joke already. Helioborg Research Center is a cold, lifeless military base crawling with electric-themed robot sentries. A busted elevator means you'll be working your way up multiple flights, taking down the sentries and collecting the occasional item or two. It's considered a dungeon, but it barely meets the description, and it could be wrapped up in no time at all. Helioborg ends up being the one and only real playable area in Olympios, and now it's pretty obvious that the developers were racing to the finish line here. I guess I should mention that after Alvin rejoins your party for the last time, things are never really the same again. The road to healing for Alvin is a bumpy one, and this fact is nicely reflected even in battle dialogue. Other party members are reluctant to link with him, and he has a hard time celebrating during victories.
You okay?
I'm fine. You don't need to worry about me.
If you say so.
These are great details. The developers could have just defaulted to the same high-five animation for Alvin and Leia, but they don't. That shit is over, and I appreciate that the devs took the time to reflect the story's progress within the gameplay itself. At the top of the research building, Gaius has taken control of Volt, a powerful spyrite and the main subject of testing from this research center. You might remember that spyrites are basically zombie spirits brought back to life by infusing fossils with mana. They're an emerging technology in Olympios, and one that doesn't require killing a spirit. Now, maybe it's just from me not paying close enough attention to the story, but I hardly see how turning a spirit into a zombie slave is considered the more ethical thing here. But nevertheless, spyrites are meant to be a metaphor for green energy, and let's just leave it at that, because we're at the endgame here, and I got a pizza in the oven. Forget about it. Gaius uses Volt to fight the party, but isn't able to properly control the spirit. He concludes that spyrites are a dead end, and reaffirms his commitment to destroying all of Olympios' Spyrex. It's, I guess, commendable that Gaius was willing to look into alternative ideas first, but also, he kind of comes off like someone who read a story about one electric car lighting on fire one time, and then unilaterally deciding that all green energy is a scam, and that we should just burn down windmills because they're killing birds or some shit. After a few conversations with Balin, the party discovers that the key to a successful tether lies with which spirit is summoned. Minor spirits, as it turns out, are less unruly and serve the summoner more willingly. This explanation is pretty rushed, but suffice to say, Jude is adequately convinced that Olympios can gradually recover, if they abandon Spyrexes in favor of the cleaner Spyrite. Jude and Gaius have shown a surprising amount of respect and cordiality for each other throughout the story, but now they're at a true impasse. Jude wants to give the Olympians a path towards salvation, but Gaius thinks they can't be trusted to make the right choice, and he'd rather tear the whole thing down, even if it means destroying the technology that the sick and infirmed need to survive. Jude has grown to be a real leader in all of our hours spent with him. He tells his friends that he's going to confront Gaius and asks them to take the night to decide if they want to join him or not. That evening, we get to witness conversations between Alvin and Elise, Rowan and Leia, working out their feelings and reaffirming their internal struggles they've overcome and their goals to create a better world for everyone. Mila breaks it to Jude that destroying the schism will definitely kill Maxwell, and when it does, she intends to take on his responsibilities and become the new Lord of Spirits. That doesn't mean that she'll never see Jude again, but it does mean that she won't get to continue living with him as a normal human. Jude and Mila reaffirm their commitment to create a better world for both humans and spirits alike, but it's a bittersweet scene. Jude knows that his best-case scenario still involves losing the woman he loves. But during their adventures, Jude's learned a lot from Mila about courage and resolve, so he puts on a brave face and accepts his mission. Xillia already had a pretty decent script, and these scenes have some of the best writing and character interactions in the whole game, and it couldn't have come at a more appropriate time. The next day, Jude and Mila head for the temporal crossroads, aided by the rest of the party who, of course, decided to go along. Although I think it would have been funnier if they didn't. Elise is just like, I'm literally 12 years old, I'm not gonna go fight some grown man with a six-pack. Xillia really crawls by in the last act, and this is best exemplified by the lack of a proper final dungeon. The temporal crossroads simply involve moving from point A to point B, and you could clear it in about 5 minutes. I'm not exaggerating. The dungeons in this game were never really great, but I'd almost take the giant empty rooms of Vesperia over this shit. What a letdown. Now, Gaius could have went ahead with his Spirix destroying plans, but he respects Jude too much, so he challenges him to a duel first, which is commendable. Real bro energy there. He even offers to let Jude turn back one last time, but his offer is refused. Our boy Jude has come a long way since we met his timid ass in Fenmont. His adventure may have started with him running for his life, but now he's standing firm and not backing down. Gaius is a real trip here as the final boss, since there's no real sense of urgency or emotion. Neither party fighting hates the other, so there's not a lot of satisfaction to be gained from vanquishing your opponent. This had all the makings of an unsatisfying ending, but I couldn't help but like it anyways because of how unconventional it was. Chaotic evils like Noctigal might be more fun to defeat, but Gaius is a much richer character because he's not a villain, he's an antagonist, and that's an important distinction. As far as the final boss fight goes, it's good enough. You'll take on Musée and Gaius simultaneously, and it's a lot to deal with, especially with Gaius spamming his mystic arts, and Musée constantly resurrecting him and undoing all your progress. Also, during this fight, Gaius has gone Super Saiyan and rips off his shirt for dramatic effect.
Oh no, he's hot!
Defeated, Gaius tells Jude that he still thinks he's naive to expect Olympios and Riz Maxia to get along. Mila suggests that Jude is a perfect example of someone who overcame fear and met a challenge head-on and grew from it. And if he could overcome all of that, then so can the rest of humanity. Jude offers Gaius a hand of peace, and Mila offers Musée a hand of friendship, which they both graciously accept. Musée is still a psycho killer and definitely belongs in prison, but whatever. Mila finally destroys the Lance of Kresnik, which frees Maxwell. In return, he offers her a chance to become human again, but she rejects it, opting to be the new Maxwell instead. She's like, you've lived long enough, old man. Jude and Mila say their goodbyes. It's a bittersweet moment, but it was inevitable. All journeys must end someday. Jude, who had always looked up to Mila and clinged on to her, stays strong. He chokes down his emotions and lets her know that he'll be alright. What a mensch. With everyone in agreement, Maxwell breaks the schism. Throughout Riz Maxia, we see the climate rapidly changing as mana is overflowing across the world. In Olympios, nature begins to grow again for the first time in millennia. Within weeks, it will be concreted over and made into a shopping plaza with a Starbucks and an H&R Block and a KFC that nobody goes to. But for now, it seems like there's finally some hope for Bakersfield, California. I'm sorry, Olympios. This last act of humanity drains Maxwell's life force, and he fades away.
I don't feel so good.
Mila says goodbye to her friends and somberly accepts her new lot in life, finally becoming the true Lord of Spirits.
It's good to see you again.
Same to you.
In the epilogue, we get quick vignettes showing us how our party is doing in the new united world. Alvin has teamed up with Jurgen to form a business that might help unify Olympios and Riz Maxia. Leia goes back home to Laron to help her parents with the family business. Elise is living with Lady Drizel. She reaches the height of her character development here by putting Tipo away in a toy bin so she could play with girls her own age. And Rowan is working as a military advisor to Gaius, who's still serving as King of Azul and maybe also Rashigal, that part wasn't clear. I found all these vignettes to be as realistic as they were uninteresting. Everyone is writing letters to Mila, catching her up on their lives, so presumably she's reachable. But the details aren't exactly elaborated on. You gotta feel bad for the poor postal service worker here that keeps getting letters addressed to the spirit world. He's just gotta be like, I don't know how these people expect me to deliver these letters, but I don't have the heart to tell them, so I've just been dumping them in a creek by my house. Our last scene is in Fenmont. Jude has gone back to school, no doubt from Gaius pulling some strings and getting his criminal record expunged. He's thinking of Mila and feels her hand brush against his. It's almost romantic, but they're simply not meant to be. The world has been made a better place through their adventure, and Jude confidently declares that as the world adapts to challenges and grows stronger through it, so will he. After spending about 30 hours or so with Xillia, I was ready to move on, despite how much I enjoyed my time in Res Maxia. I think the characters were pretty well written, all things considered, with maybe Leia, Elise, and Mila being a little too dull and stereotypical for my liking. I know that's all the girl characters, but please don't infer any sexism from that, it's just a coincidence. I voted for Harris, okay? Neil Patrick Harris. I thought Jude started off as a really weak and underwhelming protagonist, but over time he grew on me. I had the expectation that he was going to have some unique skill or be secretly cool in some way, but he's kind of just a normal guy. And that ended up being the point, because it's not our skills or our abilities, but our choices that determine our real strength. Choosing to do the right thing, even when it's hard, is what makes a hero out of an ordinary person. And Jude ended up being a great example of that. For those paying attention, Tales of Xillia had one major theme, and it's left an impression on me even after the journey's end. People, no matter how fallen they are, can change and deserve the time and opportunity to do so. Alvin, despite his numerous fuck-ups and double crosses, was still given new opportunities to do the right thing, and when it really mattered, he did. Mila and Maxwell both learned that humans deserve to have some agency in their lives and not be forced into a preordained existence. Even Gaius became less pessimistic about humanity after meeting Jude and becoming inspired by his hopefulness. Rowan, as we learned through side quests, did some pretty messed up things in his younger years, but with time brought maturity and an opportunity to repent and start again. I'm going to do a reverse Yoda here and say that empathy leads to forgiveness. Forgiveness leads to healing, and healing leads to change. For most of the game, the Olympians are viewed as the enemy for their Spirix abuse, but after seeing how many innocent people rely on it, our party better understood their point of view. Once they got over their anger towards the Olympians, they were able to work together with them to find a viable alternative to Spirix, and that will in turn hopefully lead to a better future for everyone. Empathy, forgiveness, healing, change. Now, obviously I think there's a limit to this. I mean, in Xillia 2, Muse is somehow a hero character, when in reality she should have been given a Nuremberg-esque trial for all the innocent NPCs she killed. But whatever. Now, as for Gaius, Mila, and Maxwell's perspectives for the majority of the game, they weren't necessarily wrong for not trusting humanity to do the right thing. There's a fine line between forgiveness and naivety, and these characters know that there are plenty of people willing to take advantage of grace when given an opportunity to do so. That's why the narrative never really paints the antagonist's views as bad or wrong. There's a good argument to be made that most of the time, people can't be trusted to do the right thing. But in the end, Xillia bets that it's better to live dangerously with hope and faith in others than to live safely with mistrust and resentment. Speaking of Xillia 2, did you know that there was a sequel? Well, good for you, but I will not be talking about it here because I am all out of time. But if you want to see an Xillia 2 retrospective, go ahead and hit me up in the comments section. There are plenty of things that I unfortunately had to cut from the script for time, like how I felt about the voice acting and some more side quest material, but the good news is that I could still talk about all that in an Xillia 2 video should that ever happen. I want to thank you all for sticking around and watching my whole retrospective. If you had a good time, then I'd implore you to hit the bell icon to get notified when I make a new video, to leave a comment on this video to boost it in the algorithm, and to have your ass a nice ass day.